Welcome, everyone. This is the Hype Watch coming to you live, doing the first part of our 5-part NED character analysis series called NED Talks. And this one is subtitled Meet Eddard Stark, as we're going to talk about we're going to talk about Ned up to the first 3 chapters of his POVs with a little bit of a few other chapters in between. So let's go ahead and get everyone introduced here. Let's start out with Tinker.
Hello everyone, I'm Tinker, as you probably know, and I'm excited about these talks. Ned is one of my favorite characters, as Stark has always been my favorite house, so it's been really nice rereading these chapters, and I'm looking forward to the chat.
All right, LT Giles.
What's up, everybody? Cyril T. Giles here. I want to start off with saying it was said that the King's Road was so safe that a young maiden could walk bare naked and not be harmed when Ned was ruling the North. Need I say more?
James Bushell.
James Bushell here. Happy to talk about poor dead Ned and his damned honor.
And Don Willie.
Alamogolas, everybody. Don Willie. So glad to be here with my friends to talk about Ned.
All right, thanks, guys. So let's get started here. And we are first introduced to Ned in the first real chapter after the prologue from Bran's point of view. And one of the first things we find out about him is that he is doing an execution of a runaway, as we all know. And one of the first things he tells Bran is that those who pass the sentence are the ones who should be swinging the sword. He mentions how the king has their own executioner. And it gets easier for them, and that's the old way. Their way is the old way, and their way is to do it themselves. What did you think about that? What were your first impressions on that? I guess we'll start with Don Willie. First impressions of Ned and what he was telling, things he was telling Bran.
I mean, obviously he is steeped in tradition, and it's one of those things where he's like, look, you really need to identify with the place where you're from and your traditions. And also, if you're going to, be a leader or a ruler of any kind, that it shouldn't be that you pass off the harder decisions for someone else to carry. And, the hardest thing you can do is to look someone in the eyes before you take their life. And, he just wanted to instill upon Bran this sense of honor and also fair judgment and let him know, like, look, if you want to show strength, that this is probably the ultimate way that you're, going to be able to display that to the people that you're going to be ruling when you grow up. And he said that, you're going to be Rob's bannerman. You're going to have a keep of your own. And then one day, this might fall to you, and you can't go and say, all right, well, I don't want to do it. I'm going to pass it off to someone else. Like, that's not what really makes you a man. And that's not really what makes you a leader. So he was really trying to impress upon his son, just these tenets and values. And you have to admire someone who actually has core principles that they stick to and that they really impart upon their kids in order to ensure that the things that have kept their world in order for such a long time are maintained and passed down.
All right, thanks, Don Willie. It's kind of funny you said core principles, because that reminds me of I'm a Texas football fan, and I'm imagining of our coach, Charlie Strong, who is Well, we'll get to that. Let's just say he might have a Ned fate, and he has a little bit of Ned core values. But first, I want to go to LT Giles. Tell me what your thoughts about some of what are the things he was telling Bran about, their way is the old way, swinging, passing the sentence. And just your first impressions of Ned.
It's hardcore. I mean, that you're the Lord of the North, and well, at this point I didn't know. Well, anyways, that he does that, he's going to be the one to carry the sentence. That's just a very cool thing. It's taking responsibility and being a great leader, and yeah, I don't got much to say about that. That's it. Sorry.
James Michelle.
Yeah, I occasionally prod Ned in his honor, but I mean, I do think that it's mainly, when I talk about Ned in a negative light, it's because of his failure to adapt to Southern politics. But in the North, in his element, I do think that he is definitely a man of respect, an honorable man, and I think those are good qualities of him. It just didn't translate well in the South for him and his family. But yeah, it's an honorable thing to do. I do think that maybe, I do feel like the North made, like, if you were read this story out through its whole progression through many years, I feel like maybe they won't adapt as quick. Like maybe they're kind of like too steeped in tradition at times, and they might have a failure to progress in the future. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a characterization of Ned that is quite honorable, bottom line, and it's cool that he's teaching his children his values.
Right on. Tinker.
I really like Ned, and I really like this first impression that we get of Ned, because not only we get him teaching us about the ways of the North, but we see him teaching his children. Many times we've seen great lords and they've left, they forget about their kids, they don't pay attention to their kids, and then the kids suddenly take control, and it's an absolute disaster because, the kids inherit, and if your kids are dumbasses who don't know anything, they're going to screw up. And I like how he takes them, he looks at it, but at the same time, he goes to Bran, he asks, have you understand why we do this? He takes his time to teach them, to teach him his values. And not only that, one of the things that I really like about this whole thing, I wrote it down, and Bran, that it really captured me, is that Bran asks, can a man still be brave if he's afraid? And that is the only time a man can be brave. His father told him, do you understand why I did it? And the time that, it's one of the things that I really like about Ned. It's one of the times that you see, one of these high lords truly being a good father, truly teaching the kids what it is to rule, what it is to be responsible. But at the same time, there's this false idea that to be brave is to not be afraid, and it creates this false arrogance and this false showy thing that is just. I really like how he goes to his son, he tells him, he explains, but at the same time, he's teaching them to be responsible. I really like that part of Ned. And as James says, he really was not meant for the South. And I think one of the things that George shows us very well is that certain people are meant to be in certain places. You should know your place, and his place is in the North, with Northern rules, Northern style. And he should have never, ever gone South. It was a disaster waiting to happen, as we clearly see later on in the books.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. For me, I thought this was very much George harking back to his old anti-Vietnam thing, because if you anyone who doesn't know American history, back Vietnam, a lot of politicians and them that sent men to war, that were keeping this Vietnam War going on, a lot of them were not sending their kids to the front line. They were keeping their kids away from the draft. They weren't serving themselves. And you had songs like Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortune Son. And they were heavily criticizing that. And we're introduced to a character here, Ned, who is almost the exact opposite of that. He is, he does the work. If he's going to, make the decision, he's going to lead the way. And I think it was one of maybe the best first impressions a character could have gotten. I think that's a big reason why Ned has so many fans, is because his first impression was done as well as almost any character in this thing. I mean, this is one of the most noble things you see in the series, and it's one of the first characters you see getting looking so respectable and I don't know the word for it, but just like a real man's man here. Anyway, so if anyone has anything else to comment, otherwise I want to move on to how Ned handles the whole direwolf situation. Does anyone want to say anything before that? All right, let's go to the direwolf situation. So we find out that we find the direwolves. I think everyone knows what's going on there. At first, Ned is like, we need to, do the right thing. Just, what do you call it? Kill the direwolf, put him out of his misery. But then as you see, even though Ned kind of has a little bit of a strict hand, or he's showing his kids the way, he gives his kids a lot of freedom to go about and do their own thing, and he's also able to be persuaded by it, as Jon is able to talk him out of the decision of the direwolves and let him bring him in, and Jon, Robb, and Bran really, and when he makes that decision to switch, he's also like, you guys need to be the ones responsible for these dogs. The servants aren't going to go and do what you want. So you can see kind of here that he really respects his servants and their time for what it does. He doesn't he doesn't say oh, who cares about what the servants want? They're here to serve my kids. No, he actually respects the servants' jobs and their time and their responsibilities. And so let's go with LT. What did you think about how Ned handled the whole direwolf situation?
I think he handled it perfectly. I mean, telling them you will take care of them, feed them, and if they die, you're going to bury them themselves. I mean, that's just awesome. I mean, what more can I say about it?
James?
I think he handled it perfectly. First off, it shows that he's not a pushover. That he's still stern, commands respect, and that he's not going to just roll over, whatever people say to him. And it also teaches his kids responsibility. So I think it's multi-layered, and I mean it's obviously he handled everything right in that situation. And when you see him shows the respect for his, that's definitely one thing that makes Ned stand out from other lords, is the fact that he seems to have genuine care for his people compared to some other people that we know throughout the story. But so yeah, I respect that about Ned, and I thought he handled it perfectly.
Tinker?
I think it's another instance in which he shows really how good of a parent he is. At the beginning, you see his compassion, thinking the pups are going to die. Why let them die slowly? Let's just, kill them all so they don't suffer. It shows a lot of compassion, someone who cares about everything, including animals. And the moment when he sees that his kids really, really want it, he thinks, okay, this is another way that I can teach him responsibility. You really want something? Okay, you're gonna get it, but you have to take care of it. It doesn't matter, just because you're lords and you can get away with getting stuff doesn't mean that you don't have to take care of it and have the responsibility of doing all the effort. Just because you're lordlings doesn't mean that your servants should do everything for you. It teaches them, how to take care of their stuff, how to do what they have to do, not just, use their position to just, get what they want and then not be responsible for it. So I also think he handled it wonderfully.
Don Willie?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everyone so far. This was a great teaching moment for the rest of his children, because, Robb, as the guy who's going to be the Lord someday, gets to see, well, look, when you have to make a tough decision like this, where you have to teach your children something, but also this is something that like, because remember there was supposedly the whole omen of the stag with the direwolf and all that, and he kind of looked past that, where you might have some people who were kind of spooked by it and like, oh my god, like, what does that mean? uh he was kind of looking at it more from a real world perspective, and when it came to actually taking the pups in, yeah, he could have been like, no, I'm Lord of Winterfell, and my word is final. But it was like, look, he's trying to look at the bigger picture of, yes, you can be a stern parent, but you still have to show your kids when is the right time to be compassionate. So he walked that fine line, of being able to give the kids something that they want, but letting them know, like, this isn't a freebie. It's not like, all right, you get to have these direwolf pups, and all right, cool, it's whatever. Nah, you have to make sure that, like, these are going to kind of be your kids, and the same lessons that I'm imparting to you in terms of how to take care of yourselves are now the lessons that you're going to have to use in order to take care of these animals. And it was also just great the fact that these happen to be dire wolves, because I know Ned's got to feel a certain sense of pride that he's got now 6 dire wolves as part of his household, and also that is the sigil of his family that goes back nearly 8,000 years. I mean, how could you not how could you not feel some sort of pride in the fact that, like, nobody else could really have their sigil, like their family sigil, actually roaming around their castle.
Yeah, I agree. I pretty much agree with everything everyone's saying here. I think it's a great introduction. Again, another great impression of Ned here. And I think one things I really noticed is that he really didn't like succumb to Bran and Robb kind of whiny. Well, not really whiny, but begging for those dire. He's like, no, they need to die for for their own good. It wasn't until Jon put up a compelling argument that Ned finally changed his mind. He's like, okay, this is a real reason. This is a compelling argument. I'll go ahead and change my mind now. So that's one thing I thought that was pretty really great about Ned. He stood his ground until a great argument was proposed to him, and then he's like, okay, let me change things. And Don Willie, I want to go back to what you were saying about the stag in the not catching the symbolism about the stag when the direwolf goes south, gets killed by the stag. So obviously Ned didn't catch the symbolism here. But then again, a lot of people didn't first. He also didn't catch really the symbolism of the direwolves that represent the children of his houses until Jon pointed it out. Once Jon pointed it out, he was like, oh, okay. Just anyone who wants to comment, what did y'all think about Ned's views on this whole symbolism stuff? I mean, obviously it made some kind of difference because he changed his mind. But just tell me what y'all think about.
I was gonna say that I don't think it. It was a symbolism once he mentioned it. But what I was gonna say is maybe, like, he says they're meant to have him. Maybe Ned kind of believed in fate. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it was fate that this happened. I mean, something. Maybe Ned was superstitious and we didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? But maybe that convinced him.
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because I'm going to bring up some other stuff. Because to me, it seems like Ned kind of goes back and forth on his belief in superstition, belief in things. Many times he's skeptical, but then sometimes he believes. So, does anyone else want to comment about Ned's failure either to see the signs or his, changing of his mind once he saw that sign?
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as the symbolism goes, remember, they are just coming from him beheading a deserter of the Night's Watch, right? And that deserter of the Night's Watch is telling them, oh, I saw the White Walkers. Now, the White Walkers at this time have passed into the legend. And, think about something, right? even though he has contact with his brother who's at the wall, we don't know like if his brother has actually told him like, hey, yeah, we've been hearing reports of White Walkers from the Wildlings, because remember, uh, the Night's Watch actually still has contact with people from the Wildlings. It isn't all 100% animosity. So if Ned is kind of lacking that information, he's just hearing a guy who's kind of rambling off, and this may not be the first person from the Night's Watch who's had to behead for desertion. So him just coming out of that situation right there, and then seeing the stag and the direwolf, for one, as it's been said, there hasn't been a direwolf sighted south of the wall for a few hundred years. So, it's a shock to him to even see the direwolf anyway, and then to see the stag killing the direwolf. He may not have picked up on it because, again, he's coming from this more realistic mindset of, okay, I'm doing my duty. My duty is to behead this deserter of the Night's Watch, to set a good example for my kids, et cetera, et cetera. So he's not really picking up on any future symbolism because they just haven't he hasn't encountered any of the magical elements. So for him, it's not that relevant. It's just like, okay, he's probably come across stags in the woods all the time. He's never come across a direwolf. And yes, the direwolf is a sigil of his house, but it's just not registering to him because at that point, it's so much of him focusing on imparting these very important lessons of doing your duty and being an honorable man. And this just kind of is like, all right, well, that's some little side thing right there. But then, as you stated, when Jon really reminds him, like, hey, look, there are 5 direwolf pups here. You have 5 kids. All the genders match up, and the direwolf is a sigil of your house. And then that's the thing that kind of snaps him out of just him having the blinders on, and he's like, oh shit, you know what? That's right. And then when the 6th one comes out, it's like, wow, this really has to kind of mean something, because now there's a 6th direwolf that's kind of left out of the rest of the pack, and I have Jon here, and yeah, we already know from the TV show that Jon is not his kid definitively, but at that point, us reading it and not knowing that, it's like, oh, okay, we have the outcast wolf with the outcast brother. And so in his mind, I'm pretty sure he's probably thinking like, yeah, okay, this is the outcast wolf with the outcast child as well, and everything kind of lines up. So for him, he might have been thinking, oh, this is actually a really good thing that this happened. So yeah, the dire wolf mother made the sacrifice, possibly protecting her children from that stag who might have killed them. But look at what we have here. We have these 6 dire wolves, and now, this is really kind of good symbolism for the Starks, and especially for the younger generation of Starks as well.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to add? If not, we're going to move on to his conversation with Catelyn in the Godswood. So, we're opening with Catelyn, her first chapter, her first perspective, and we can see a lot of her perspective of her husband. She, reminds us that, even though that Ned is a traditional man, believes in the North, believes in a lot of the North teachings, when she got married, he kind of broke tradition a little bit and, made a small set for her, where she could pray, worship, do her own non-Northern worshiping. He seemed to be pretty accepting of other people's points of views. And also we find out, well, no, let's just talk about that. What do you guys, let's start with Tinker. What do you think about Ned going a little minor rogue here in bringing the sept up into the north?
Well, I don't think he kind of went rogue. I just think that he's a man that really respects other people and respects. Is very tolerant of other people's points of view, other people's religions. He's always been sort of like, respect me and my thoughts and my religion, and I will respect yours. And Catelyn was leaving. This world is very hard for women. Like especially, you have to leave your home, you have to leave your family, and suddenly you find yourself in a realm, in a castle with a husband that you just don't know, all by yourself. Maybe she takes a few people there, but mainly she was all by herself. And the one thing that sustains people a lot is the faith. We've already seen how Ned is. The God's Road for him is a place for him to be alone and to be silent, and a place of refuge for him. And I think that he just thought that it would, that she deserved also to have a place of refuge, a place where she could pray, a place where she could, would have that solace, even if she doesn't use it that way. But I think that his heart was in the right place when he created that set for her. I do wonder, because we haven't really seen how the power of the old gods and the trees really work. Not really. It's a lot of mysticism, and I do wonder if building a sept is, somehow weakening their power in Winterfell. I don't know, because we don't know that much, but it's something that comes to my mind. But I think it shows another very great aspect to Ned Stark. We saw him, how he was with the people that he had to execute, how he was with them. We've seen him with his children. We've seen his respect for his servants. And now we see how well and how much he respects his wife.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely see that. We also might see a little bit that he might not be as gun-ho about the whole Northern thing. He might not believe as much as... And I think we find that out a little bit here. He talks... When Catelyn says, "Oh, things going crazy, things are crazy past the wall," and he's like, "Oh, it's just stories." You see, he's got kind of a little bit of a skeptical mind on things. Don Willie, what do you think about his skeptical mind and there's a little bit of breaking a tradition here for the sake of Catelyn?
Well, as much as it was for the sake of Catelyn, I also think it was part of him continuing what his father was doing. You got to think about it like this. His father went out of his way to betroth his older brother to a southern house, which was something that hadn't been done in a very long time. And also, remember, he fostered him in the Vale. I mean, he's ferrying his family out to the south in a way that's never really happened before from any kind of northern lord. And even a few people have brought up in the chat about Rickard's southern ambitions. And so I think this was just a way of him, trying to bind his house a little bit more to the other parts of the realm and show like, hey, this alliance wasn't just a one-time thing. This is something that will continue to shape not only the North, but the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, because, they're thinking long-term, like, okay, well, this is the new order now, and we're just going to keep this as it is. And like you said, as far as him not really believing what's going on above the wall, I think it's because, even though he does maintain contact with his brother, it may have been a long time since him and his brother actually have spoken. And if his brother hasn't sent him any ravens, or if his brother hasn't, been down to Winterfell in a while, his brother may not have told him, like, hey, look, remember all of that stuff we used to hear when we were kids, all the old Nan stories? Well, it's actually true. And I just think that, he's been a very pragmatic man for such a long time that it's like, all right, look, we need to focus on getting business done and, when the moment that you start bringing up stuff that has nothing to do with keeping things in order is where he's kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, because he hasn't had to deal with it directly. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where I think Ned is going out of his way to keep things status quo, but also help it evolve in a way that seems kind of manageable.
All right, LT, any thoughts here?
Of course, I got some thoughts, man. No, I'm playing. So, anyways, yeah, this shows that Ned loves his wife, probably unconditionally. And then it's brought up later in the story, not now, that, well, it's probably thought here that, he wanted his children to, because they're half Tully, half Stark, to keep their traditions. So I definitely think, we talked about him being a man of tradition. He wanted to keep their traditions. But one thought that comes to my mind, too, is, and this is hypothetical, if, say, Ned was a conqueror, he probably would have been like Alexander the Great, who, when he conquered nations, would let them keep their gods. And I think that's what Ned would be like if he was a conqueror. He'd probably let them keep their gods. And unlike Stannis, who would burn the gods with.
LT, did you mean to mute yourself there?
Yeah, you guys couldn't hear me?
Oh, yeah, just after the Stannis burned the guy.
Oh, yeah, no, I was good. Yeah.
Okay. James?
I mean, I think it's pretty simple. It just shows the kind of person Ned is. He's not. I mean, he knows that Cat is not from the North. He knows that she grew up with, a different religion in her household. He's not going to change that. I don't think that this is any, discussion point at all, really. And as a person that's been in a relationship for 8 years, I live by the mantra: happy wife equals happy life, and Ned knows that as well.
Word. All right, so we find out that he was fostered in the area. He sees Jon Arryn pretty much as a father figure, but I'll go on to that a little bit later. Really, what I want to talk about right here is we find out he hates the Lannisters. He has and pretty much holds a grudge for them showing up late in the rebellion. What do you guys think about that? You think that he should he get over it? Is he right to hate him this much? What are your thoughts on like how Ned views the Lannisters? Should he try and be like, okay, well, whatever, or should he is he right to be this kind of bitter with him as he seems to be?
Well, I guess I'll go first. I think this is sort of a device. It's at this point you respect Ned, you view him as an honorable person, and this is to start sowing the seeds of dissension towards the Lannisters. And some of it may be misguided, and I think that's part of George's story, that some things are a matter of perspective. Just because one person thinks something doesn't mean that it completely means that, because obviously we've seen heroic acts from a Tyrion and even a Jaime. We've seen Jaime do some things. So I think it's because obviously there's definitely a lot of talk in Ned's other chapters about his sort of hatred towards the Lannisters, particularly Jaime and Tywin. But yeah, I like I said, I just think it's George saying things are a matter of perspective, not because this is a man that we know that is honorable, so we're going to assume just from what he says that all Lannisters are bad people, though we know that that's not completely the case. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also kind of wonder, like they say it's because they showed up late, but he seems to really harbor real resentment towards them. Is anyone else like Tinker? Do you think it could be? Do you think one his resentment is legit, or should he try and get over it, be more diplomatic? And do you think maybe something more than that?
I do think it's more than that. I don't think it's just hatred. I think it's also mistrust. he's a rational person. I think he's a fair person, but he knows that they live in a dangerous world. That they already had a crazy king. There was a war, a rebellion. He's lived and he's grown up in very trying, war-ridden times. So he knows that at any moment things can change, and he's seen what the Lannisters are. He's like during war, during moments in which you have to like make those hard decisions, you kind of see what kind of people they are. And the Lannisters waited to see what was going on. And when they realized he was going to starting to win, they took a coward's way out, entered King's Landing deceiving, slaughtered the way through there, and then Jaime killed the king on the back, and then they massacred children and an innocent wife. Like in his mind, they showed that they were treacherous people that cannot be trusted. So I think it's not only hatred and resentment, but I think it's a mistrust of people that they haven't shown that there's anything different. They haven't shown anything that could alleviate his worry about what kind of people they are. And they're very close to the throne. They have a lot of power, and we see throughout the chapters that he's genuinely worried by what they could do with that power. And in a way, we see that he is right. Not some of the Lannisters might be different, but the general family and their general mission during the books is not good. We've seen what Cersei's capable. We see what they do, and in a way, it's George's way of starting to see where, introducing where the conflict is going to happen, who his antagonists are going to be. And yes, there is Tyrion, and Jaime eventually redeems himself, but even Jaime, before he redeems himself, he does pretty nasty things. We see what happens in this same book with Bran, what he does. That is not a good thing, and it is an attack on his own family. So he had good reasons to resent them and to be worried about them. And even if he's a decent person, without him, Stannis would have won the Blackwater, and the Lannisters would have been stopped. Well, quite possibly, Stannis would have won, and things might have been quite different. So I think that, in this world that is so dangerous, he has good reasons to keep that resentment and that worry. I just wish that when he'd gone to the south, I wish that he'd been more open to Robert about his thoughts and would have tried to push it a bit more, because he was right. He was right about them, at least about most of them. He especially says about Tywin and Cersei, also Jaime, and Jaime, until he gets captured, he was also right about him. So I agree with Ned.
Don Willie.
Yeah, I mean, listen, look at it from Ned's perspective, right? Jaime was a member of the King's Guard under Eddard Targaryen, right? And if you look at what Ned had been trying to teach Bran, Robb, and Jon in Bran's chapter, and then you juxtapose that with the actions of Jaime Lannister, it's like, all right, well, Jaime is not an honorable man, yet somehow he's still in this power position because he's part of the King's Guard. You have Tywin Lannister, who was a former hand of the king. Aerys was his boy. Everybody knew that him and Aerys were tight for a very long time. And then when Aerys needed his help, when Aerys needed Tywin's help, Tywin turned his back on him and basically had his son, because this is probably the way that he's thinking about it. It's like, oh, Jaime didn't just do that just to do that. He probably got orders from his father to kill him or whatever may have you. So he's just looking at it in terms of like, there's just so many layers of treachery here with these people. And the fact that, when you actually do meet them later on, they just come off as like these arrogant assholes, with the exception of Tyrion. But even Tyrion, to a certain extent, kind of comes off as a little smug. But it's just one of those things where if you're looking at it from his perspective, if he's the guy who's trying to uphold the system and trying to make sure that everything works out fairly for everyone else, then the Lannisters represent the people who are always trying to beat the system so that they come out on top. Because think about it, after the war is over and Robert is crowned king, now Cersei is the queen. It was like by all rights, you could say, okay, it was a smart move in terms of alliance making, but it's like, dude, can you really trust these people? Like, Robert, how in the world are you gonna marry this woman when her father, killed the previous king's heirs?
Exactly. How can you trust them not to turn on you?
Yeah, and so that's where I think all of that stuff comes from in terms of Ned's thinking about the Lannisters. It's like, yo, these people are just not to be trusted, and and now you're talking about making them a part of your family, and yeah, it's just it's the wildest situation possible.
Yeah, I mean, from right here, it seems that he's angry about the Lannisters for, in my opinion, he's angry about the Lannisters for not joining in. I thought this is a little, like, it's okay not to trust him, but I thought it was a little, like, he seems to harbor a lot of hate. I thought that was a little too, for what the reasons he's given, what reasons given here, I thought it was a little much because they did help. Aerys had Jaime at the time. If the Lannisters would have joined Robert earlier, Jaime's dead. And every single family acts that way. I don't understand why Ned was so like, well, why weren't they acting? Even the Martells, he did the same thing. Aerys did the same thing with the Martells. He held, Elia and Lewin there, and that's how they got, that's how he had the Martell support. But he doesn't really hold that against the Martells, so he only holds it against the Lannisters. So makes me wonder a little bit on that.
But hold on, you got to think about the fact that the Martells actually married into the Targaryen family for one, on multiple occasions. Remember, Elia wasn't the first person to marry into the Targaryen family from the Martells. So I mean, she has a Targaryen lineage to a certain extent. Lewin Martell has a Targaryen lineage to a certain extent. So Ned can kind of forgive that based on the fact that they were all really family anyway. But the Lannisters weren't necessarily family, and the way that they entered the war just made them look like a bunch of opportunists. It was like, okay, well, we know who's gonna win this anyway, so fuck it, we're gonna come in and basically just mop up the rest and get all the credit for it. And
Sure.
I think that might be.
They don't trust him, but don't. I think the way he resents so much, it might be a little much.
Well, and then also, just as somebody brought up in the chat just now, Tywin also, had 2 innocent children murdered.
Yeah, but we'll get to that in a little bit, though. On that.
And a woman, an innocent woman, because Elia was also raped and killed. And she was completely innocent. She had no choice about anything that happened. Not only that, he didn't really hold Jaime hostage. If he would have really held Jaime hostage and told them, I'm going to kill Jaime unless this or that, they would have joined the war. They would have actually joined the war and fought against Ned and Robert. And then I think Ned would have understood, because Ned would try to protect his son, but nothing at all. It's like Tywin didn't care that his son was under Aerys' control. He in no moment either he didn't care that Jaime was killed, or he didn't think that he would be killed. So,
well, he cared. That's why he didn't make a move.
If he really cared, Aerys would have threatened him, and he would have fought in the war, and he would have betrayed him in the last moment. Because if you remember when,
well, he did summon him.
When Tywin starts attacking, he doesn't kill Jaime. He doesn't give an order to kill Jaime. He gives Jaime the order to try to kill his father, because he was so convinced that the moment that you become a Kingsguard, you're under his control. So, no, I don't believe that. I understand that, and the Lannisters suck, except Tyrion and Jaime later on.
All right. Well, we'll get to this will come up again later, so we'll bring it up again. So we'll move on. So then we move on to finally seeing
You
Eddard.
forgot me, Jerry.
Oh, did I?
No, it's all right, though. Just move on.
What do you got to say, LT, about it?
No, everybody pretty much said enough, so let's just move on.
Okay, so we get to Eddard 1, and we find a lot about his thoughts on Robert and his sister as he takes them down to the crypts. Basically, he has a fond memory of Robert. I'm not sure why, but he has a very fond memory of Robert, even when he was young. Like, he thinks highly of him, thinks highly of his strength. We find out that Lyanna meant a lot to him, so much so that, he broke a little bit of tradition and made her a crypt, a little statue in the crypt for her. And he pretty much, like, Robert kind of endures himself to Ned again because he remembers Lyanna, and he's like, yeah. And, and so what do y'all guys think? I guess anyone wants to speak about how Ned thinks about both Robert and Lyanna, and as they're having like their early conversation in the crypts.
Well, LT, you want to go first on this one?
No, I don't have much to say about this particular thing.
LT, do you think it's kind of weird that how highly he thinks of Robert, even though Robert really was just kind of a man whore?
Yeah, I think that is a little hypocritical. And I'll be honest, I mean, I love Ned, but that is definitely a little hypocritical to think so highly of a guy that, doesn't really have as much honor that he is. And, you would think that being such an honorable man, he would try and hold Robert to those standards, but he probably looks up to Robert and probably puts him on a pedestal, because it's his best friend. So it is, I would say, a little hypocritical.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
I don't completely agree on that. I think that Ned and Robert grew up together in the Vale, and they knew each other when they were children. And I think that he sees Robert as a brother that he loves. He also talks about Brandon as well, and we see in many of the chapters that while he loved them, he was not blind to their errors. And you can love people and still think that what they do is incorrect. We see many times that he does not agree with Robert. But, when you love people, just because you disagree with what they do, it doesn't automatically happen that then you just stop thinking, you just stop caring about them. And he is very specific about what he admires in Robert. He admired him as a soldier, as a warrior, and he does say that that is what he should have really been instead of a king. So I think that you can admire parts of some people and then not admire the less good qualities and think that those are not good qualities. But I think he's capable of loving Robert because he grew up with him and he became like a brother, and Robert does love him in a very selfish way because I think he's completely lost himself being a king, and it's one of the things that the first impressions of these characters in the books are very important. And we see the first impression of Robert that Ned doesn't recognize him. That's what he says. He's like, until Robert hugs him, he does not recognize Robert at all. He describes him as fat, unclean, and like not taking well care of. And he's like, who is this man? And I think that is the problem. He loves the man that he used to know, and that man is still inside Robert. He's just lost himself in this position that he should have never ever had. He should have been a warrior, a soldier, whatever, except a king, and he's just lost who he is as a person, as anything, and he's just lost his way. But that doesn't mean that Ned does not care about the man that he used to know. So he's capable of seeing the negative parts, but the part of him that is so loyal to the man that he used to love, to that brother that he still loves, is not capable of being just, he's very loyal. Once his loyalty is given to someone, he does not step away, even if it would be better for him and his family in the long run, as we see. So I think that he doesn't approve of what he does, but he still cares about him, and he's capable of seeing that. That's my opinion.
All right, Don Willie.
Yeah, I mean, with Ned's, reintroduction to Robert, it's just funny because, he's thinking about how they were as teenagers. And I mean, listen, if you think about people that you might have known from when you were teenagers to how they are now, like especially if it's somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, if they were friends of yours during those times when, you're still, you're not quite a child, but you're not quite grown, you might have a very euphoric memory of these people. And then when you see them later on, especially if you haven't seen them in a few years, if they've changed, it's kind of like, yo, what the hell happened to you? But you're hoping that the person that they were when you knew them back when you two, or when your group was really close, you're hoping that they're still that same person, and you might see a glimpse of it, but once some of it is gone, it's like, damn, well, how do I deal with this person now? And it's just interesting to see how much reverence Ned had for that time period before Robert's rebellion, and you can kind of tell that Ned really, would like to go back to that time when it was a lot simpler for him, because he didn't have the responsibility of being the Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. He had his sister, he had his best friend, and things were pretty optimistic for him. And now he's looking back on that, and he's seeing the image of someone who used to be almost like a hero to him. Even though he was like his brother, he was still almost like a hero to him. And he's kind of like, well, damn, I can't even really look up to this dude anymore. He kind of has lowered his opinion of Robert to a certain extent, because he's like, yo, the dude used to be clean shaven. He was the guy that most guys probably wanted to be, nearly 20 years ago. And now it's like, the hell, man, dude, you let yourself go. You got, this wild beard going on. You got dark circles under your eyes, and like when's the last time you bathed, because you're doused in perfumes right now? And I know he's got to be, thinking to himself like, man, I wanted to be you before, and now it's like, I'd be embarrassed to if I were you, and it's like, how do you reconcile that in your mind when one of your heroes has fallen from grace? Well,
James, any thoughts there about any of that?
Well, I mean, I do think that, I mean, he says himself that he loves Robert, because the first thing Robert says to, the first action that Robert does when he gets to Winterfell is to go see the crypt of his sister. And I don't think Robert would have been a man whore if Lyanna would have lived. I really think Ned thinks that too. I think that he respects Robert because he believes that Robert truly loved his sister. So I think that's where it comes from. I don't think it's in his mind it's hypocritical, because like I said, I think if Lyanna would have lived, Robert wouldn't be the person that he is at this moment.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So the next half of their conversation, we get kind of a little bit of Ned don't give a fuck about what anyone thinks down south. We see that in a few examples here. First, we hear about that Robert had planned to, foster Sweet Robin to Tywin Lannister, and Ned's like, no, none of that. I will foster the kid. Don't trust the Lannisters. Then he's also, offered the hand of the king. He doesn't really want it. He wants to stay at Winterfell. He doesn't really care what it looks like. What do you think about Ned being like, I don't give a fuck. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I want. I don't want to play the political game at this point for these issues. Don Willie, tell me what you think.
All right, so yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. Ned is not a politician at all. He's been in Winterfell for all these years. He hasn't had to deal with any of the crazy backstabbing, wheeling and dealing of the South. And, and it's like, all right, well, damn, now you're trying to pull me out of my comfort zone to go and basically rescue you from fucking up. Because let's be honest, Robert knew that he was gonna, fuck things up. And he basically told Ned, like, look, I'm basically bringing you down here not only because you're my boy, but you're the only one who's going to be able to keep me and the rest of everything else in line. You're an unfamiliar face in the South, and so people, aren't going to have the same kind of. They're not going to have the same kind of rapport with you, so they may not try to approach you with the same bullshit as if I put somebody who they already know in charge now. And with the whole Sweet Robin thing, like, hey, well, you know what? Jon Arryn was the dude who taught the both of us. Why in the world are you going to give Jon Arryn's kid to somebody like Tywin Lannister? Now, remember, in hindsight, we can go back and we can look at this is the Tywin Lannister not only who betrayed the Mad King, this is the same Tywin Lannister who slaughtered the Rains and the Tarbecks, so with that in Ned's mind, it's like, yo, you're going to give Jon Arryn's kid to be fostered by a butcher, pretty much. And, that's not the thing that Ned wanted for Jon Arryn's kid. It's like, yeah, maybe somebody else's kid, but not Jon Arryn's kid. And yeah, as far as him just not caring about how it looks, like, look, you know what? He again, this is him sticking to his core principles and the way that he was raised. And so it's like, well, how in the world do I co-sign what Robert is talking about? Because again, not only does this take me away from everything that I've been doing and working to keep my part of the realm safe, but now you're talking about throwing me into like I'm a wolf and you're throwing me into shark infested waters. There's only so much I'm going to be able to do to fight off these wretched creatures, and you're just like, why in the world would I subject myself to that? Forget about subjecting other people to it. It's like, why would I subject myself to that? Just let me get Sweet Robin, and you can find someone else to be handed the king. I'll make sure that the kid is raised up right, and we should be good from there. And yeah, just having that kind of little battle of wills with Robert, I know that must have kind of weighed on his mind heavily.
James, any differing thoughts on Ned not care about insulting Robert and not about caring about insulting Tywin Lannister?
Well, when it comes to once again, Ned, he's not going to push it too far, but he definitely knows that he can say some things to Robert. But once again, this is George vicariously through Ned, once again sowing the seeds in the reader's mind that the Lannisters are trouble, that Tywin Lannister, obviously this paints a pretty, when he says something to the effect like he'd rather be in a pit of vipers than be with Tywin Lannister or whatever.
He would entrust a child to a pit of vipers than Tywin Lannister. That's
right. So that definitely sows in people's minds the sort of thing that George's trying to set up with Tywin. But yeah, once again, it shows the kind of person that Ned is, because if you went around to how many different lords in the kingdom and you got Robert in the room saying that he wants to be Hand of the King, they'd probably be, all over him within a second. They'd be all for it, but Ned is more sullen. He doesn't really care about that. So it goes to show the character of Ned, kind of that he's not like another, he's not really like other people. He is who he is, and ambition and power isn't something that's part of his characterization.
All right, I don't even know if I want to call on Tinker, because I know she's just going to say Ned is right, Ned is right, Ned is right. But let's hear you say Ned is right, Ned is right.
I'm not going to say Ned is right. I'm going to say Robert is an asshole. This is the moment that you start really seeing just how weak, how pathetic, weak-minded, jerk, and just I really do not like Robert Baratheon. During the book, I think he's selfish. He might have been a different person back then, but now he's lost who he is. He's lost all of his honor. He's not only that, he's lost all of his strength, because even if there's a moment in which he shouts, he says, "I'm the king," or whatever, in some things, in the things that really matter, in things that he really has to fight for, he's a completely weak man. Because, Ned says, "I will foster Jon Arryn. I'm family." It would make sense. He is, through Catelyn, Jon Arryn he's the uncle. He's Robert Arryn's uncle. It would make sense that now that his father is dead, he could foster him. But since Tywin Lannister has already accepted, it would be an insult. And he's too indebted to Tywin that he's not brave enough to try to go against it. And that would be a decent excuse. There is blood. There are family. That is one of the good excuses he could use. But he's let himself been driven to this point that he's so indebted to Tywin Lannister that he's not capable of really showing strength and saying, "I'm doing this." It's easy with Cersei or with other stuff, but to Tywin Lannister, he's too much of a coward. And also, it also shows very bad things when he does not want to. In that same conversation, he's saying that he's not going to be the Warden of the East, I think, the title. I think it's in that moment that we realize that he's going to take that title away. Technically, they're still in a moment of peace. It's not like he's going to need to lead wars or whatever, but he's already thinking of taking it away from and he's like, "I'm not ungrateful to everything that he said." And you're like, yeah, you are being bloody ungrateful. Whatever it's comfortable for him, whatever it's easier for him, he will do. He's gotten to the point that he wants what he wants to do. He doesn't want to be responsible. He wants to fuck any woman that he wants. He wants to eat whatever the fuck he wants. He wants to drink. He wants to hunt, but he doesn't want responsibility. So things that are uncomfortable and not so easy to do, he'll just, not do them and do whatever it's easier for him. And we see a lack of respect for Jon Arryn, who was his foster father, a father figure to him, who was there as his hand of the king for so many years, and he doesn't even have a second thought for his son, who was even named for him. Not one tiny bit of care. And when his best friend, who he trusts, who he knows is not doing it for ambition, for power, for anything, just offers him to foster him when he's his uncle and would be not that much of an insult to Tywin Lannister, he's not capable of doing that even tiny bit of effort, because it would be uncomfortable and would maybe cause a bit of a confrontation with the Lannisters. And it shows an incredible, selfish, weak man, no matter if he's physically is strong, and even if he has rage, whatever, he's shown as a very weak person. And then when he offers Ned the honor, and Ned is like, "I don't deserve this," he's like, "I don't care." That's his best friend. Yes, he is a king, but he goes there to him because he's his best friend and he wants his best friend, but he doesn't even care what his best friend wants or what his best friend thinks. And it shows an incredible lack of everything. Whatever Robert Baratheon might have been in the past, he is not that person anymore. He's become a fat, bloated, weak-minded, lazy scumbag. And he is the result of the disaster that happens later on in the books. And that's my thought of Robert Baratheon.
So if you were Ned, how would you handle this fat, lazy bastard?
It's very tricky because Robert Baratheon is the king, and he cannot be trusted. He has, ours is the fury, is their word. And you see very clearly with Robert that it is true. He hasn't let his rage for the Targaryens go for how many years? He's like, in my nights, I kill him every night. He's dead. You cannot kill him anymore. Get over it, fat guy. But he will not. He will not get over it. But I think that Ned should try to be clear with him, try to be polite, but at the same time tell him what he feels. Ned has a great difficulty of expressing himself. He always tries to be very noble, very this and that. And I don't think that it's that Ned doesn't care what the Southerners think. I think Ned has a very clear idea of where he belongs. I think that he knows that he belongs in the North, that there is where he can do good. He goes to the South and he does not adapt. And I think he knows very clearly that he's not made for the South or for that court. He tries, but he knows that he's not made for it, which is why at the beginning he renounces. Even later on, we'll see in a later chapter that when Luwin and Catelyn gang up on him, he just doesn't want to. Because he knows very clearly that that is not the job for him. That is not the place for him. But he's too respectful. He's too, that's the king, and he knows that Robert could give him problems if his friend loses his shit. So he tries to do it in a polite way, but there's just no way around Robert Baratheon. He's just a jerk and a terrible king and a terrible friend. And a terrible person.
Ned's a beta.
Yeah, that's kind of true. LT, you were Ned. How would you was Ned playing his cards right? How would you handle it if you don't think so?
This is the way I look at this situation. Okay, well, yeah, he has every right to distrust Tywin Lannister. But make no mistake, if Robin was fostered with Tywin Lannister, he would have been a great man. Tywin's a great leader, a great battle commander. He would have had a great life. What's Tywin going to do? Teach him to betray people? No. Tywin would have raised Robert Arryn good. He couldn't. There's no way Ned could have ever fostered Robin because he's going to be hand of the king. So, and if I'm not mistaken, don't they mention Stannis fostering him, or is that no?
I think they were trying to set that up on, I think Stannis and I think Jon Arryn was trying to set up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, anyways, yeah, if Ned fostered him, the same thing. He would have turned out as a better man than he is, and he's probably doomed because he's sick, and Liza isn't going to give him the direction he needs. So, yeah, I think it would have been, I think he'd be a great person if he got fostered by Tywin Lannister.
So you think Ned should have let that go, and what do you think about it?
Because Ned's, like you said, he's holding a grudge, but like I said, he has every right to distrust him, but I think he would have got raised good with Tywin. I think Tywin's a great leader and would have taught him about a lot of stuff.
But LT, he's
not even capable of raising his own children. He was terrible father to Tyrion, to Cersei, and to Jaime, and look how the three of them have ended. Tyrion the best one, and he's the one who ignored the most. He didn't even know his own twins were having sex.
I was gonna say, but LT, Sweet Robin's got Papa Baelish. He's gonna turn out great now.
He's probably gonna be murdered in the Winter, and that's very unfortunate.
All right. Before we get into Baelish, let's move on then. I guess unless anyone has more to say about how Ned's playing his cards so far.
Well, I just real quick. I think that even though Ned was contemplating saying no, in the end I don't think Ned's personality, his honor, I don't think he would have declined the offer from Robert. I just think and it's part of Ned's issues is that he's too, like I said, he's kind of a beta, and I think in the end he would have succumbed to Robert and would have gone regardless of what he was thinking.
Okay, because in this next chapter we get him saying to Catelyn he thinks he's going to refuse the hand, and he thinks he's also going to refuse the betrothal. He's thinking of pretty much refusing everything, and he feels that like he even wondered. I don't know. He's kind of unsure about his decision, and he's like, "Man, this all should have been Brandon. This should have been Brandon doing it." So we get a little bit of some Ned unsure of himself here, and tell me what y'all think about that before we move on to.
It just reminds me of the same. I mean, this reminds me of Jesus Christ, how he's like trying to tell God that he doesn't want to die on the cross, but he's going to do it anyways. Like Ned was going to always accept a hand. He just did, was having doubts, but he was always going to accept it.
Does everyone else think he was always going to accept it? That he was just doing a little bit of a charade with Catelyn and Maester Lewin?
I mean, I think that's what he truly wanted. Obviously, was not to take it. But like I said, I think in the end he would have taken it.
I mean, well, you know what? Think about something though, right? Because he had the opportunity to be the hand before Jon Arryn, and him and Ned got into him and Robert got into beef over the whole killing of Ilya and children, and that's why he was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm done. And then, years later, they had the opportunity to really kind of mend fences during the Greyjoy Rebellion, and they mended fences just, well enough that he was like, all right, look, I'll take Theon Greyjoy, as the ward or whatever, so you won't wind up killing him or whatever. And
well, you took Theon because kind of the same thing we were talking about earlier. You took Theon to keep the Greyjoys at bay, because when you hold a hostage, you generally keep that family at bay.
No, I get that part, but I'm pretty sure, you got to think about it. Greyjoy's two oldest sons had already been killed, and we already know Robert has no compunction about killing kids. So, hey, he might have wanted to kill Theon as well, and maybe Ned was like, all right, look. How about no more child murder? I'll take the kid and, raise him so he isn't a dick like his father, and we'll just call it a day from there. And, now, again, he's sitting up there looking at Robert, and he's thinking to himself, like, if it wasn't for the fact that Catelyn kind of told him, well, look, Robert is your boy. I know you guys have had problems, but you can't let the Lannisters just bump him off. And where he was probably thinking to himself, like, damn it, I could have sent the man pack in. And now that this shit has happened, and even though I told him, don't fuck with the Lannisters, he trusted him anyway. He's like, shit, now I gotta save him. Now he kind of feels obligated, because he's like, if something happens to Robert now, I'm going to feel bad about it because I let him, go back with those treacherous ass Lannisters.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about next, is the whole life, like the whole Lysa's message. And Ned does a few things in this message. He goes through a few steps in this message that kind of shows his character. First, he's like, he goes back to his kind of his skeptical ways. He's like, wait, what? Murder? No. Even though he hates the Lannisters, he's like, nah, no way. It's just the grief. It's just the grief that's like, he's very skeptical about this. And this actually comes up later, but we won't talk about it now. But sometimes Ned is a little too skeptical sometimes. I don't know. So first, and then he blames it on Lysa's accusations. And then, like, Catelyn's like, well, we got to figure it out. And Ned's almost like, I don't want no part of figuring this out. It's kind of weird, in my opinion, that he doesn't want to figure out who killed or how Jon Arryn died. He seems to be not interested in that part. He wants to just stay in Winterfell. And then he eventually is convinced by Catelyn that, you need to figure this out. You need to protect Robert. And then he's like, God damn, you're right. And he's kind of angry about it. He's like, hope the others take y'all for convincing me to do this, even though, I mean, y'all think he was originally planning on doing it all together. I'm not so sure. But that's what eventually he finally says, "Oh, 7 hells, I gotta do this." What do y'all think about, like, one, him being skeptical, and two, how he was kind of how he came to be like kind of angry about, like, yeah, okay, I guess I got to do this, and he seemed not to be also interested in like protecting Robert. Like his first thoughts was not to, protect him, but eventually he was convinced too. He needs to go down there and do it.
I don't think. Well, my thoughts is that Ned is. I think Ned's instincts was saying him not go to South. I think that Ned gets hung up with his honor, with trusting other people, with other things. But I think that he has strong instincts. He just doesn't follow them. He kind of like shoves them down and lets his head and his honor and duty.
What do you think about his skeptical instincts? Like his instincts to be skeptical about everything.
Well, I don't think that his instincts are to get skeptical. I think that his instincts are telling him not go to the freaking South, and anything that would make him go South is something that he doesn't want to like get into. If Jon Arryn was really assassinated, he would want to find the whoever did, because he really does care. But a part of him is telling him don't go South, and that coming up is like, fuck that, I don't want to have to go to the South. And I think he is capable of saying no. And I think he was, as Don Willie said, he did say no back in the day. And if we remember later on in the books, when Daenerys' assassination comes out, he says, no freaking way, and he gives it back. So he is capable of standing his ground. It just takes him a little time. And I think part of him is telling him really strongly that he has to stay there, that the South is dangerous, that something is going on. Do not get into that shit. And things keep popping up that are making him realize that his duty is to his king, to his friend, that he has to protect him, that he has to resolve the murder of his father figure. And he doesn't want to get into that shit, because a part of him, I think, his instinct is telling him that it's bad news, that going down there is not going to be good for him. He does tell Catelyn, my father went to the call of a king and he did not go back. People, the Starks that go south do not come back. He says so. He says Brandon, his father, Lyanna, they all went south. They all died. It was not good for the Starks the last time they went down south. And I think a part of him knows that it's not good for him. It's not good for his family. It's just not a good idea. But his duty, his honor, all of that coming out is just gonna push him south. So he doesn't want, it's not that he's skeptical about what Lisa Arryn says, it's just he doesn't want to believe him, because that would make him go south, as we see later on when Catelyn gives him reasons to realize that there are good reasons to believe what she says. He's like, damn you both, because I don't want to do this. And he does it because he has to find who assassinated Jon Arryn, and he wants to protect his friend. And he didn't want to be forced to go south. And I think that's why he's skeptical. He's skeptical because he just doesn't want to believe. And I think that's why most people are skeptical about certain things. Not because they're tempted to be skeptical or it's part of that. It's just they don't want to believe that, because that would mean certain things that they just don't want to accept. And I think that's what happens with Ned Stark. He just doesn't want to go south. He knows it's a bad idea. He has had examples in the past that it's not good for their family, but he's just feeling trapped. And, he should have said, well, I'm sorry, Robert, but I have to think of my family. But he's not capable of doing that and leaving his friend hanging, even if his friend doesn't really deserve his loyalty, as we see later on.
Do you agree, LT? With what Tinker's saying, or do you have a perspective?
When I hate to go ahead in the story, but right here, Ned had good instincts, because if you think about it, what did we find out? The biggest cliffhanger ever at Storm of Swords, that this bitch was lying. This bitch was lying about this whole thing. The whole time we find out that she poisoned fucking Jon Arryn. And it's like, it just sucks, man, because I don't know, man. I don't want to talk about it.
No, I agree, LT. It sucks because she is a horrid bitch. She and Littlefinger. And he was right about both of them. I'm
not so sure, but you know what? It's not going to be in this video, because it's going to happen again later. We'll come back to his skepticism in another video. But in the meantime, James, what do you think about Ned here, or what we've been talking about here?
Well, I mean, obviously, in this specific incident, his skepticism was definitely well-founded, as LT pointed out. But yeah, he does say, he says something like,
he blames the grief, though. He's like, oh, she's just grieving. She's talking crazy.
Well, it would have been funny if they actually would have spent time with her in these last couple years. He probably would have definitely even more compelling case that she is crazy and could have pointed out to Cat. So maybe they should have had some family get-togethers, because maybe this whole thing could have been avoided. But yeah, he says here, the only truths I know are here. The South is a nest of adders I would do better to avoid. So once again, this is, George, at this point, we know we can look back, revisionist history, hindsight is 2020. What Ned is saying is the truth, and that George is giving us a premonition into what King's Landing is and what it is for the future of Ned. And there's definitely a lot of foreboding going on in these 3 Ned chapters, including the next one, even more than the next one, but about how if he goes south, he ain't coming back, and that it's just not going to work out for him. And his skepticism, what he truly wanted to do, he just wanted to stay at home, chill with his kids, rule the North, live a normal life. That's all he wanted to do, and then he gets pulled in this, and it doesn't end good for him. So his skepticism was right in this regard.
It was right, but and the thing that you think about that's just so frustrating is he would never have no idea, because the lying fucking bitch. I'm sorry.
Don Willie, you kind of started this off. Do you have anything to add or to finish this off here?
Yeah. I mean, listen. Unfortunately, this is where we start to get the unraveling of Ned, in terms of where the first couple of chapters really built him up. It's like, oh yeah, this is strong, brave, honorable man. He has a sensible head on his shoulders. This is the first peek that we get into the fact that he may not be as mentally strong-willed as we think. Yes, he's doing this for good reasons, and him being skeptical about Jon Arryn being killed by the Lannisters, I think is with good cause, because you got to think about it. I mean, Jon Arryn's been the hand of the king for the past 15 years, or 14 or 15 years, and he's like, well, why in the world would the Lannisters kill him, and why now? I mean, the Lannisters are in a powerful position.
Yeah, and the Lannisters should be happy that he set up that wedding, because Jon Arryn set up the wedding to Cersei, right? So he should, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like the Lannisters, what would they have to gain? Because think about it, right? Joffrey is still part Lannister, air quotes. So, when Joffrey ascends to the throne, they're going to have a Lannister king on the throne. So it's like, in his mind, it's like, come on. Why in the world would the Lannisters kill him when they can't gain any more from it? They're already pretty much at the top. They can't get a better deal than they already have. So to him, it was like, all right, it made no sense. But then, once Catelyn starts talking to him more about it, and just the whole suspicious circumstances, it's like, damn it, all right, I didn't trust the Lannisters, and now there's this whole thing with Lysa saying that the Lannisters killed Jon Arryn, and he's just thinking to himself, fuck, I didn't want to go, but now, if I don't go, am I screwing over the 7 kingdoms if I don't go? And so then it was kind of one of those things where, like you said, the others take you for this. It was like, God damn it, you twisted my arm, because yeah, I was gonna go and tell Robert no, but I can't let my best friend die, and it's like, yeah, the more and more you think about it in hindsight, it's like Ned should have said no. but at the same point, it's like, well, what would you do in that situation if it was your best friend? You know, he was kind of put in an impossible situation to a certain extent, and we see what happened with that. But I mean, yeah, I'm done on that part.
Okay, so this next one I really wanted to ask is first I wanted to say, like, okay, so Ned after he decides he's going to go, he comes up with a plan of how he's going to handle who's going to be placed where, and what, like, he starts playing politics at this point. He decides that, well, Catelyn has to stay in Winterfell, and Robb has to stay because they're gonna need the rule. But he's got to take, and Rickon has got to stay too because he's too young. But he's got to bring everyone else with him to court because he doesn't want to seem suspicious. They got to part of it because they're going to have to accept the patrol, even though they know it's dangerous. They're going to have to go down there, even though they know it's dangerous, and they're going to have to seem like they're doing their best to. They want to make, like, I don't know how to say it, best appearance down there. However you want to say. So they decide to bring Arya, Sansa, and Bran with him. What do y'all guys think of Ned's plan here? Just free whoever wants to
go. As far as Ned's plan is concerned, I mean, I understand. He's got to keep up appearances, and it's one of those things where, again, he's kind of stuck in an impossible situation because he can't just bring his household guard with him. So that would be bad on his end, just to only have them. And then also it's like, damn, all right, well, I kind of had to betroth my daughter to Joffrey. I mean, because he's still thinking back and forth in his mind. Is it truly that the Lannisters killed Jon Arryn? Right? Would they try to kill my daughter? It's like, well, Robert, just betrothed Sansa to Joffrey. I know he's got to be thinking in his head, who would be the alternatives that they would put in Sansa's place, if anything. And at this point in the books, we hadn't heard anything about the Tyrells whatsoever. So, the Tyrells may not have even popped into his mind. But, later on, we find out that, they were trying to get Robert to set Cersei aside to marry Marjorie. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where, it's a very hard balancing act on Ned's part, and him trying to see, like, all right, well, how do I make a good showing to the people, so they see, yeah, the North is here and we're getting along with everyone, but at the same point be able to, do the investigations that I need to do, and to be able to basically, possibly save the realm from collapsing. And I mean, that's gotta be a great weight on his shoulders, because he has absolutely no idea what he's going to find when he gets to King's Landing. And so, I mean, like, there's got to be a lot of thoughts running through Ned's head right now. And it's the how do you keep yourself above the fray and be able to navigate these waters. Again, he is a wolf in shark-infested waters, and after a while he's got to find dry land, or else he's either going to get drowned or eaten alive.
Anyone else got any thoughts on how Ned played this? How he set up? LT, go for it.
Well, he had to. There's no way he could have, like Dominique said, he could have gone to court with just his household guard. He had to bring his family, and it's sad because I wonder what like, I know they mentioned that Bran would have so much fun climbing the walls around Castle, or not Castle Black, I'm sorry, the Red Keep and everything, if he would have gone, and I always think about that, you know. But yeah, I think he played it how he had to.
Anyone else? Okay. So I always thought, I was like, well not always, because when I went back and read this, I was like, well, why is he not going alone at first? Like, what is the reason for bringing the girls, especially after the Bran incident? But we'll talk about that later. Especially after that, actually, we won't talk about that. So especially after what happens to Bran, why he brings the girls with them? Why doesn't he just say, you know, I'm gonna go to King's Landing, get settled, and once I get settled, I'm gonna call for them there. I don't understand why he brought them there, like, you know, right away. Why he didn't wait, you know, 3-6 months before bringing them in there. That's what I would have done if I was Ned, especially since he knew he was bringing them into a dangerous environment. There's no reason for not to, you know, just put a delay on them. Does anyone disagree with me on that's what Ned should have done?
I think that people would have questioned why he was waiting. Like, waiting for what? Is he going to do something? Like, you know, warning signs would have been raised for some people. Like, yes, we do know that the Lannisters did not actually kill Jon Arryn, but he does believe that the Lannisters might have killed Jon Arryn. And now Ned is coming, that is a great friend to Robert, who loved Jon Arryn. And while Jon Arryn was not killed by the Lannisters, that doesn't mean that if Littlefinger would not have killed him, they would not have. Because they already knew that he was snooping around and that he might have suspected something about them. So, you know, Sansa was betrothed to Joffrey. You know, and the whole thing is that if he can take his entire household guard, why not take his daughters? Like, why wait? Why do the trip twice? It wouldn't make sense in a lot of people's mind. People will think that the first thing that he would want is to settle in with his daughters, to this, that. I think a lot of warning signs a lot of people would have questioned it. And I think that he wanted for things to appear as normal, as ordinary, as, you know, as non-suspicious as possible. And what I found really interesting about this conversation, it was not that, because I thought that was kind of, you know, that he thought he had no other choice, and that was kind of obvious. But the question comes out about what happens to Jon.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. First, I want to talk about the whole placement thing. But I mean, okay, so that might have been true before Bran's accident. But once Bran had the accident, I think that gives him the perfect out. He's like, Bran had an accident. I want my daughters to be with him for, you know, at least a little while. Then I'll send for them later. And no one could have said, "What the hell are you doing, huh?" No one could have said that. With the unconscious Bran happening. I'm just thinking, why there was no reason to bring after the Bran accident. There was no reason to bring Sansa and Arya down when he did. He could have waited on that. LT, tell me what you think.
Well, wouldn't it look suspicious if he doesn't bring Sansa when she's betrothed to Joffrey to King's Landing? I think it would look kind of suspicious.
No, I don't think it would have been that suspicious if, you know, everyone knew she was coming. You know.
Oh yeah,
three or 6 months later. You know.
Yeah, it kind of went.
I'm not saying.
I get what you're saying. I got you. Never mind.
I'm not saying he should have not brought him down at all. I'm saying he should have delayed them. Been like, they'll come by ship from White Harbor later.
I think at this point he is actually thinking about his daughters and about Catelyn. You know, we've already seen that Bran is his favorite child, and Catelyn is practically inconsolable at what's happened to Bran. Bran is unconscious. They have no idea what's going to happen to him. Rickon is already 3 years old and he doesn't know what's going on, and he's scared and he's crying. Catelyn can barely do anything. At this point, when he leaves, leading Sansa and Arya there, it's just, I think at this point he's just like, okay, I have to keep on with my plan. I'm gonna bring them, and at least I can be there, be a father. Just, I think that at that point is just Catelyn is not there to actually take care of the daughters. So why change it?
because he's taking him to a dangerous place. That's my thing. He knew it was dangerous. It's not like he didn't.
They would have to have gone at some point. Like, he could not have been able to delay 6 months.
Oh, he could delay 6 months easy. You just say, I'll be sending him 6 months later after things get a little bit back to normal in Winterfell.
I just wish Ned could have he could have grabbed 100 men from each house and had 1,000 men with him in the capital. That would be great.
That would have looked real suspicious.
I know, but it would have been great because I know. Just wish.
Anyone else have anything to say about that? About Ned, if he maybe should have delayed, he was right. What do y'all think?
No, I agree that he probably should have delayed if it was at all possible. I mean, I think that.
Well, I mean, of course, all he has to do is say it. That's what makes it possible.
I mean, look, there's what's possible, and then there's what's possible. You know, if Robert is like, hey, look, man, fuck that, bring the goddamn kids. You know, he's given an order by the king, and he's gonna follow his king's orders, especially at this point, if he feels that Robert's life is in danger. So, yeah, you know, I don't know. Ned was again in a very impossible situation, and unfortunately, his dumbass friend made it so much more impossible for him. So, yeah, man. Yeah, I don't even know what more to say about that.
I don't know. I think it would have worked, but I mean that's my opinion on that. If he would have just delayed, because then everything changes if he delays. But you know, hindsight's 20/20, especially when you're Ned Stark. And so I kind of want to blend this next two things in with two chapters. You know, to finish Catelyn 2 and then kind of ease into Eddard 2. Basically, let's talk about Jon. So first, we find out that Ned is refusing to even hint at who Jon's mother is. Like when Catelyn asked him, he snapped at her. Or no, actually, Catelyn didn't even ask about Jon. She asked about she kind of did. She asked if the rumors are with him and the Chardane are true, and he's like, never asked me about Jon. And then he went as far as to even ban any gossip about Jon's possible mother even happening in Winterfell. So he didn't want anyone even talking about it. And eventually it did work. And then we find out in Eddard 2, he, you know, was tricking everyone by telling everyone that, tricking Robert. I guess maybe it was harder to tell Robert, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. But he told them that their name was Wyla, and that it just made me wonder what. And then he wouldn't say what she looked like. I'm like, well, tell me what y'all think about how. Before I go into what I thought, tell me what y'all think about how Ned is handling the whole keeping Jon's parentage a secret from both Catelyn and then also from Eddard, and maybe if anything you would do differently.
Well, I mean, I just think he's frustrated that he has to, you know, essentially besmirch his honor for all these years in order to, you know, keep Jon safe and in remembrance of his sister. Obviously, it affects him throughout Game of Thrones. But yeah, I just think that he's just frustrated. You know, you have all these years, you got to keep answering these questions. You know that it's not true, but you have to put on this facade that, you know, that he went out and besmirched his, or that he went out and his honor is lessened in his mind for what he did, even though, you know, in reality, a lot of these lords have bastards. But that's just Ned's character, where he doesn't want this like mark on his record, but it is, and it's unfairly on his record. Well, we believe anyway. So I just think it's just pent up frustration over the years.
I think he actually handles it quite well. You know, with Catelyn, he knows that, you know, if it tells her, like, even if it's just a tiny lie, a name, this or that, like, she, you know, tendency overthinking things, and it will just drive us crazy. That, you know, if he doesn't give her the entire story, she'll try guessing, and if he answers one question, then she will keep asking. He says, never ask me this, and he forgives all chatter, and that's it. There's no chatter, and no one suspects anything about Jon at all. Catelyn doesn't, no one in Winterfell does, but he knows that, you know, Robert's not going to care, that not answering his question might even be more damaging, so he just gives him one name and just says, you know, don't bother, and he knows that Robert will skip to something else like he does. So he kind of know, he's very careful about dealing about Jon's origins, and he kind of seems to, he actually manages very well to know what is going to work with each person to keep on that lie. And we do see that it worked wonderfully during the 5 books. No one suspects anything about Jon. You know, no one suspects his true parentage. Other names come up, but not the real one, not ever. So Ned, well, I do agree with John Bushell that he is very frustrated by the fact that he has besmirched not only his honor, but he does mention that he dishonored Catelyn as well. You know, by the simple fact that him having betrayed her also dishonors her as well. So another thing is that I don't really like what it shows about Catelyn in the last Catelyn episode. I understand that, you know, you might not have liked the fact that, you know, she even says that she understood that they were entire year apart, they were recently married, and that he was taking, you know, his pleasures in a war that was horrible, that she understood that, you know, and even to take care of his bastard. Also, she, you know, part of her was like, of course, you know, if his seed quickened, that she would take, but to bring him in this castle, and you're like, come on, the kid, it's not the kid's fault. If you're going to be angry at Ned. Don't be angry at the kid that has absolutely no choice on how he was born. I think it's one of the things that I disliked a great deal about Catelyn. She was blaming the one person that was completely innocent, the baby that has absolutely no responsibility for his birth. But since she cared about Ned and she wanted things to go easy with Ned and his life with Ned, she decided to forgive him but not forgive the kid, which I think it's completely hypocritical, and I just don't like it.
I mean, I agree with you on on how he handled the Catelyn thing. I think you're on the money that, like, if he would have gave her a little bit more, she would have been probing even more. Although for the Robert thing, I'm wondering, he gave her a name. Why didn't he just make up what she looked like as well? I don't know why. The whole thing about not telling Robert what she looked like makes it even more suspicious. I don't know why he wasn't just like, oh yeah, her name was Wyla. She looked like Tinker Jaso. I don't know.
You know why, Jerry? Because Ned's a horrible liar. That's one quality me and Ned share. I was gonna say that, you know, I just never thought, okay, I've never been married, but I would like to think that when I find that right girl, that I settle down, I get married, that I would tell that girl anything. And I've always wondered why, and this is what I hate about Ned. Why didn't you just tell Catelyn? Jon would have had an easier life and not been, you know, I mean, that scene in the first episode where she's up there and she's just looking at him so mean, and it's so sad, man. You just see the look between them. And then even when Bran's in the room and, you know, she's like, get out. It's like, if she knew that Ned didn't cheat on her, that Ned was faithful to her, you know, she wouldn't have hated Jon, and he probably wouldn't even gone to the wall, you know. But I mean, it's the thing. It's like that. This stuff has to happen for our story to progress.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, LT. As I think Catelyn would have been like, "What the fuck do you have a Targaryen here? What if she would?" I think she would flip out, be like,
"So you don't think that she would? So you don't think that Catelyn loves Ned 100%? You think she would betray Ned if she found out that Jon was a Targaryen bastard?
For this reason.
No, I disagree 100% because I believe...
Hold on. Let me give you the reason. Because I think she would see Jon as a threat to her children. Like, I think she would be like, we have a Targaryen here. You know how Robert the King feels about Targaryens. he might destroy our entire family.
I
might
disagree.
I'm saying this is what Catelyn would think. I'm not
No,
saying
and
that's
I
what
think
Robert.
you've told me this before, but I think she would have been able to keep a secret too as well, and I think Jon would have had an easier life. That's just my
I think
opinion.
she's a little crazy. I think she's a little irrational when it comes to her children, as we saw when she decided to free Jaime. And so that's why I'm like, okay, fine, yeah, don't tell her anything. Who knows what she might do. She knows how she knows how the South thinks. They might hold it against Ned for harboring a Targaryen kid.
I disagree, Jerry. I think that for that exact reason, she would never tell. Because to betray Ned, it would be to betraying the Starks, her children, would be also in peril. We've seen that Robert is not a rational person either. He had no problem killing the Targaryen children. If something happened to Ned, what would happen to the children? What would happen to the Starks? What would happen to Winterfell? There's no way that she would risk something bad happening to the family by revealing that. But I do understand why Ned didn't say anything. I do agree with LT that I think it would have been better in the long run for him to tell Catelyn. But let's think from Ned's perspective. At the very beginning, he didn't knew Catelyn. They weren't in love at the beginning. That happened later on. At the beginning, they were strangers. He didn't know what kind of person she was. He didn't really know how she would react. So at the beginning, he said nothing. And it took time for the love to happen. But by then, she hated Jon. If suddenly he would have told her the truth and her feelings for Jon completely changed, people would ask, what happened? Why the change? Why is she suddenly acting this way? A lady of her position to accept a bastard? It's completely unthinkable. Cersei would have had them all killed if Robert even tried to bring his bastards into the castle. And many women would be completely intolerant of that. For her to sound at the beginning to be completely intolerant, angry and resentful, to suddenly be accepting, it would have raised a lot of flags. And then she might have been angry for not trusting her, for keeping that huge secret from her. It could have, they being in love and then suddenly would have created maybe barriers between them. Doubt could have created. And not only that, there's this saying that, that a secret stays a secret only when of the two people, one is dead. Only one person keeping a secret, you can really keep it. But if there's two, then it's less. Then what if then he tells one person and they're like, oh, but we have to tell someone, and then a secret, the best way to keep a secret is only for one person to know it and never say anything else. And I think Ned is very, very cautious and he doesn't want to risk it.
Yeah, my stance was pretty simple. It's the less people that know is the less people that can tell the secret. That's my stance on the whole thing.
One thing I'm looking for, this is way off base, I'm sorry, but one thing I'm looking forward to is if Lady Stoneheart somehow finds out Jon's true parentage, I hope she fucking feels like shit, because she treated Jon like shit for no reason.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that. Let's focus on Ned and his decisions here. Don Willie, I know you want to say something.
Okay. So, listen. When it comes to the whole Jon, Cat, Ned situation, yes, Cat was 100% irrational, treating him like that. She was definitely the wicked stepmother, telling Jon that it should have been him who got, either fell out of the window, pushed out the window, because, I don't think at the time they suspected that Bran had been pushed out of the window. But basically, she told this kid that he should have been crippled and in a coma. And I was trying to keep the cat hate away, but you guys just brought it out of me. But we're gonna move that to the side for a second. Look, Ned did what he felt he had to do in order to keep everyone involved safe. If he had told Cat, you got to think about this, right? He tells Cat, oh yeah, this is my sister's child by Rhaegar Targaryen. Not really knowing who Cat was, as has been mentioned earlier on the panel, right? There's a possibility she thinks to herself, this is the son of the man who started this whole war, right? And because of that, the guy who I was supposed to marry is dead, and his father is dead, and now somehow, you know, the guy who I am married to is keeping this secret from the entire realm. And then there's the whole issue of, I wonder if they were married. If they were married, does that make Jon the true king? And am I harboring, the true king here? What happens if I find out? Because, look, you don't want those thoughts going through Catelyn's head. If those thoughts start going through Catelyn's head, Catelyn's going to be like, damn, you know what? I have to tell somebody. I can't just keep this in, and it can't just be between me and Ned this whole time. I'm going to have to bounce this off somebody. And the moment that you tell somebody is the moment that somebody gets you all killed. Ned wasn't trying to get his entire family slaughtered. So you know what? If I gotta, take the brunt of this abuse from Catelyn for a little while until she, can shut the fuck up about it and let us live our lives, then fine. But what she did to Jon is absolutely unforgivable. It is reprehensible, and fuck it, I consider her to be a wretched human being for the way that she treated Jon for the entirety of his life. And then saying, when Ned was leaving to go to King's Landing, like she didn't even give it any time. Just like, so you're gonna accept the hand of the king position? Okay, cool. So let's talk about getting Jon the fuck out of here. It's just like, whoa. You haven't even made all the other plans, and you're already, talking about, you're leaving, so is Jon. Send him off to the wall. I mean, think about it, right? Even if you want to talk about, okay, well, if she would have known that Ned didn't cheat on her, maybe she would have treated Jon better, right? Okay, then there's the whole awkward situation of, oh my god, I gotta walk on eggshells with how I treat this kid, and if I treat the kid too nice and I, tell people, no, you can't talk to Jon like that. Make sure if you're in the practice yard and you guys are training with swords, you can't hit them too hard and all this other stuff. Yeah, then that's gonna bring up a whole bunch of questions from other people. So it's like, even if she doesn't talk, her actions would speak volumes. And it's like, hey, you know what? Look, yes, Ned was fucked up for not putting Jon in a better situation somehow. I don't know specifically how as of right now as I'm going through this, but there should have been some way that Jon was a little bit more protected, especially after he figured out like Catelyn is purposely treating Jon fucked up. I mean, remember, she didn't call him by name until she told him that it should have been him lying in a damn coma and crippled. She called him bastard for the better part of 14 years. 14 years of bastard. Come here, bastard. What are you doing, bastard? Do this, bastard. Oh, wait until your father gets home, bastard. I mean, come on, 14 years worth of her doing that shit. Fuck Catelyn, and that's all I got to say about that goddamn Jerry, you motherfucker.
Wait, so Don Willie, what do you think Ned should have done about it? You think he should have just? I mean, we saw him let it happen because I guess he knew he had to he couldn't press the issue too much.
Listen, at the end of the day, Ned should have been like, yo, look, if he since he decided to keep this a secret, he should have been like, God damn it, Cat. All right, I brought the kid here. All right, I brought him here for a reason. Treat him with some goddamn respect. You don't want to, take care of him as and treat him as one of your own. Cool, but he has a name. Call him by his fucking name. All right, his name is Jon, not bastard. Respect it And I mean, like, yo, remember, this is supposed to be all patriarchal society. The man is supposed to be the head of the house, and he doesn't have the balls to tell his wife, yo, stop calling that kid bastard because the kid has a name and his name is Jon. Fuck.
I think it's a bit more complicated than that. I think that it's a very complicated situation. I think Ned was always kind of like in the edge, trying to manage everything the best that he could, but without risking any suspicion. Like Catelyn, whether he wanted it or not, had a lot of power in Winterfell. Once he left, he didn't know what she would do, how she would treat Jon. And at the same time, well, yes, this is a patriarchal system. That's not a good system. And he clearly did not want to rule that way. He didn't want to, I think that, yes, that Catelyn, I think it was dreadful and horrible the way that she treated Jon. But at the same time, wouldn't people question if he tried to force his wife to treat him in a nice way? Like the fact that he actually took him inside Winterfell and treated him as his own was already seen as an oddity. The fact that it'd been done before the Starks is one of the reasons that, became less suspicious. But if he would have insisted so much to her to be respectful to people, were like, why the hell is she like people? I think that he was trying to manage the secret so that it would be the best for everyone, for Jon, for Catelyn, for his family. And I don't think he knew that it was a very complicated situation and he didn't know exactly what the best way was. I think that he tried to be the best way so that it wouldn't be suspicious to anyone. Yes, he was taken care of. He was protected, but at the same time, he couldn't protect him from the treatment that he would get as a bastard, because then what legitimized him, it would have raised a lot of questions. And I just think that Ned wanted to protect him so bad and was so afraid of what would happen to him. He remembered what happened to his sister and what could happen to the entire family if any suspicion was raised. That I think that we've seen through the first book that he always remembered what happened to his family. It's how he became a lord, with the practical extinction of his family. Like only Ben is left to him, and he's in the bloody wall. So I think he's so desperate to keep his family whole, protected, and safe that it left Jon unprotected to certain things. But if he would have left him, foster him in another household so he wouldn't be under Catelyn's wrath, that he wouldn't been able to protect Jon. He was in another castle. Who knows what would have happened to him there? If he would have insisted too much to Cat might have grown even more suspicious of him. Would have questioned even more who the mother was. I don't think it was the ideal situation, but I think that he was genuinely trying his best, and I don't think he knew a better way. And I think that we don't know a better way. So I'm very sorry for Jon, but it was genuinely a fucked up situation, and actually I think it made him stronger. And I think that he's gonna need that strength in the future.
Okay, but look, you brought up earlier about the fact that he basically banned, or it was either you or James that brought up earlier that
he banned gossip about Jon's mother.
Right. So I'm like, okay, so you can ban gossip about the kid's mom, but you can't ban people from. You can't just say, hey, you know what? No, it is my mandate that you call him by his name. If he's in Winterfell, I brought him here. I'm raising him as my kid. Yes, I didn't legitimize him, but still, he has a name. Call him by the goddamn name. Like I don't understand what's so difficult about that part. And it's not even, remember, again, like, and even when I'm talking about patriarchal system, I'm not talking about oppressing Catelyn and saying, oh, you're a woman, you're beneath me. But I'm like, no, if you are the head of household, your rules should apply. Period, point blank. If you are head of household, your rules should apply. And I'm just, to me, it kind of, I'm flabbergasted by the fact that he just wouldn't lay down that kind of rule. It's like, oh no, you can't speculate about who Jon's mother is. But you know what? You don't have to call him Jon. You can disrespect him as much as you want by calling him bastard. Whenever you see him.
Don, you cannot force people to like or to accept others. The name is just one of the ways that she got back at him. If you would have forced people to call him by his name, people would have resented him even worse because people look down on bastards. But if you force someone to name a bastard by his name, like you have to treat a bastard better than what they believe they should be treated, their anger and resentment towards Jon could have been even bigger, because then they would be like, oh, you're a bastard, but because you're a lord's bastard, I have to treat you one, I have to give you your name. Like, it could have caused even bigger problems for Jon, because it's not the name that's the issue. It's the hatred that she has towards him. So she would have found other ways. She could have even found worse ways to treat Jon, because now not only is she forced to see him every day and to hold him in her castle, in her lands, in her place, but now she even has to call him by his bloody name. When you force those sort of stuff on people, the resentment grows and the hatred grows, and you find other ways because the anger has to come out one way or another.
I agree kind of with both of you, but I agree with Don saying that, yeah, he could have forced all these things if he really wanted to. But I also agree with Tinker. If he would have forced it, there would have been some resentment. I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do anything about it other than just be mad. But the thing is, when you're playing the long con, like what Ned is with this, he's in the long con, he's trying to convince everyone that Jon is his son. You got to play the role. If you start making all these rules of stuff like that, and then you get all this resentment, eventually it's going to seep into the South, especially in Riverrun, where Catelyn is from, that this bastard's getting some special treatment up north. They're like, well, and it's going to cause people to be suspicious in the South. To me, like, why does Ned treat this bastard so special? What's up with that? What's up with that?
Look,
like,
well, wait, but I'm not even talking about some super special treatment.
Oh, no. Listen, for the time, Jon is being treated normal for a bastard. Like, in the set of bastards, doing that would make him like a special bastard. Like, most bastards do not get treated that well. In fact, Jon is already probably treated in the upper tier of bastards, other than like in Dorne.
Right. Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, he's in the actual castle. He's getting training. He's getting educated. He's getting to be with his half brothers and sisters. I get that. What I'm saying is Ned knowing who Jon is and what Jon actually represents. I think it was fucked up of him, of like, not only are you going to keep his true parentage a secret, not only from everyone else, but also from Jon, but then he's got to suffer the indignity of whenever he sees this woman who hates him, he doesn't even get referred to by name. He gets referred to by bastard. So, like, he's had to suffer 14 years worth of indignity. And it's like, fuck whether or not it gave him thick skin. It's about the fact that, if you had more respect for your own family, then you would make her respect just that one rule. It's like, you know what? I don't care if you don't feed him. I don't care if you don't go to the seamstress and say, oh, it's Jon's name day, let me go buy him something. I don't care if you don't, I don't care if you want to, say that the kids are only allowed to play with him, on, one day a week, whatever. Just do me this one solid and call him by his name. What's 3 letters? You know, like you're already not going to give him any respect for being a bastard and for him being here. Just do me this one thing and don't make him suffer any more than he's going to. Because let's be honest, he's like just him being a bastard. He was gonna suffer regardless. But it's like the fact that she went out of her way, and she talks about how she basically went out of her way to hate on Jon all this time. And the fact that Ned was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm just going to allow that to happen because I don't want people to ask questions about where Jon came from. And then to even take it back to the whole Robert Baratheon situation where Robert was like, oh, well, who is this woman? It's like, all right, yeah, he gave her a name, but, look, the reason why he didn't give her, why he didn't give her a description is the fact that it's like, you know what? You don't want someone else to overhear what this woman looks like and then them to start going and looking for people to ask questions of. The fact that he gave her name was already bad enough because it's like, all right, we already know that certain names are more common in certain parts of the country than other places, right? So it's like, all right, Wyler might be a more common name in the South and specifically to Dorne or specifically to the Reach or something like that. Okay, so now that I know that Wyler is a more common name here, if I have any suspicions, then I already have a starting place. But if I have a name plus a description, somebody might be able to piece things together, and he didn't want that. But again, like I said, for me, I just think that Jon already was going to suffer the indignity of being raised as a bastard and knowing that he had no place in the world. So to add on that one more layer of, okay, well, I have this woman who is going to constantly remind me that she hates me. That was the thing for me that was just a step too far. That I think that if Ned was really, so-called in control of his household and really respected his family more, that he wouldn't have allowed to happen. But that's just me.
Well, we can agree to disagree.
And so we shall.
Like, I don't get, and I've said this, and I've heard all your guys' answers, but it always comes back to me. It's like, if Robert would probably not even refuse him in a heartbeat if he just would have said, legitimize Jon. Then Jon's not even, and I don't know why Catelyn thinks he's a threat. He's still behind Bran and Rickon and Robb. So why is he a threat? And he would have had a gooder life, and it puts the suspicion way far off of being a Targaryen. Because he's a legitimate Stark. So nobody would ever suspect you as a Targaryen. So I just wish Ned would have asked him to be legitimized, and he would have had a better life.
Oh, that would have pissed off the Tullys.
Why? He's still behind all the boys.
Well, remember,
it's iffy. It's iffy if he's behind Bran and Rickon and Sansa and Arya. All of them are half Tully. He might have just jumped 4 Tullys,
Nah, well, no, like legitimized bastards can't jump in front of.
It's iffy. It's not. It's iffy. Like the rules on that is iffy. It's not like cut in stone.
And it would be considered an insult to Catelyn. It would be considered an insult to her for legitimizing a bastard, a child that is not his child. And we've already seen of all the boys, the only one that actually looks like Ned is Jon. He's the one that looks more northern. Apart from him, it's only Arya. The other kids may have a few things of Ned, but they look like Catelyn. Suddenly, a son that is a Stark that looks exactly like Ned, they would have felt very, very threatened, and that could have caused a lot of problems. It would have caused problems with Catelyn. It could have possibly caused problems between the siblings. It could have caused jealousy between Robb and Jon. It could have caused problems with the Tullys, as they say, I understand why he didn't do it, even if I do believe that it would have been better for Jon.
Yeah, and then there's also the whole thing as Catelyn brought up later, and I know we're kind of getting off into the woods, but she does bring up when Rob wants to, when Rob decides that he wants to legitimize Jon about the Blackfire rebellions, and she's like, well, look, it might not be Jon who decides to rise up in rebellion against you, but what about his grandsons, you know, in a couple of generations? What about if they decide that they feel like they're more legitimate Starks than, you know, than your descendants? And so I can see why he wouldn't legitimize Jon on that particular perspective.
Yeah. So unless anyone has more to add about Ned's decisions on how he handled the whole Jon situation, then we'll go on to his decisions on how he handled the Targaryen situation. Should I move on? Okay. So we find out that we got info about Dany, and you know, Ned is all of a sudden like, whoa, no, don't touch. Like, we find that he never wanted to harm any of the Targaryens, any of the kid Targaryens. He's still defending Dany. And we find out kind of Jon Arryn was kind of the same way. He didn't want to do the same thing, which kind of makes sense because it's been fairly hinted that a lot of the honor that comes from Ned, a lot of his values comes from the fact that he was fostered by Jon Arryn, who was thought to be a very honorable man as well. And so he's kind of carrying that here, where he, you know, wants to protect. He's against children being brought up in these politics and into all of this, and any harming any children because of it. And he's also kind of skeptical that the Dothraki will even bother to come over again. So it's not even a worry in his mind. And what do y'all guys think about how his whole thoughts on the children? Because I mean, if you ever read like the Art of War, make sure your enemy can never to win is to make sure you win every battle ahead. And Ned's he's not into that. He's not into making sure that they'll never rise up again. So what do y'all guys think here?
Well, this is sort of the ethical dilemmas that George wants the readers to think about. Obviously, the honorable thing to do is not to kill children. That's pretty common, a common thought. But of course, you can see
hold on, James. You do got to think. Could this cause the death of many other children in the future if a war happens? You know.
Yes, I mean this is sort of my utilitarian thought process. You know, the kind of how I made the argument that Shadow Baby saved lives. But yes, obviously this is the sort of thought process where these are the things that George wants to make you think about. You know, me personally, I err on the side of Ned. You know, I don't, even though I have the utilitarian thought process, I still, don't think you should kill babies. Now Dany is like 14. I mean, maybe there's a little bit more merit. But this is obviously not in Ned's character to do something like that. You know, he's not for killing people in the shadows. He's not for sending assassins. He's about meeting a person one-on-one in battle and having two men fight it out on the battlefield. So it's not his style. Obviously, he's not going to be for it, and this is why they argued in the past. This is why they have their tiff down the road. So it's obviously a big point that this is kind of one of those things where, yeah, Ned is kind of a beta, and he, he's got this honor, and he's going to accept whatever Robert says. But this is like one of those things where something else that comes in conflict with his honor makes him speak up against doing this action. So it speaks to Ned's character. It's a characterization of Ned, and we also see the irrational. At the same time, we see the irrational nature of Robert Baratheon. To me, it seems like Robert is this great warrior. Like he would revel if the fucking Dothraki came over with a horde and Dany there. You would think he'd want to get his warhammer back, put on his armor, and he would revel the challenge of a fight. So it's interesting that he wants to take these backhanded, or like these kind of dark.
Why do you think? Why don't you think Ned appealed to that about Robert? He's like, well, if they do cross, gives you a chance to wield that hammer again.
I guess it probably just didn't come up in George's mind, or it's just something that Ned he just didn't think. Maybe Ned, as soon as he heard it, he doesn't think about it like that. He's just like, oh no, this is a bad, this is something bad. He doesn't have that thought that maybe he should appeal to Robert's warrior in him and maybe try to turn it around. But yeah, that's what I think about that whole situation.
It's funny, but I don't think that. I think that the old Robert would have really enjoyed the war, but I don't think current Robert would have enjoyed the war. I think that he's lost a lot of that. With all the drinking, with all the whoring, he's fat. He can barely fit in his armor. I don't think he would be. I think he's gotten. I think he's resigned to the life that he has. I think that he does not like what he got, the throne, and I don't think he first things first, he's not in any shape to fight. And I think that while a part of him denies it and a part of him doesn't like him, I think that he subconsciously does know that he's not in any shape to get into a war, no matter how much that hurts his pride. And I think he's just resigned himself to that dreadful life that he has, which is why he drinks so much and eats so much and fucks so much, because that's the only thing he has left. And I think that Ned, he does the right thing. He does what he believes in. I think that, if you don't follow your conscience, if you start, the line of killing children, then where do you stop? What kind of person do you become? You eventually lose who you are. And I think Ned's, is very clear about that. And in a way, when you fear something so much that you act irrationally to stop it, many times you actually end up causing that. We see it also in the books. The Dothraki have no intention of coming. They even kill Dany's brother. It isn't until the attempt assassination of Daenerys that it gets Khal Drogo pissed off. Sometimes when you think I have to stop this, eventually you cause that thing to happen in the first place. Dany didn't become the conquering, dragon-wielding queen that she does until all that stuff starts it. When you start killing backwards and forwards, then the other people want revenge for that. Then eventually the cycle has to stop at some point, because if you keep on the cycle, the war never ends. And I think in this case, Ned does the right thing, because what would have happened if Dany would have never been assassinated? If there wouldn't have been an attempt, she would have married Khal Drogo. He wouldn't have tried to go. Khal Drogo might not have died. It could have been possible. It could have not been. She could have her son, and she could have ended up living with a Dothraki and never come. And nothing would have happened with Dany. It isn't until that moment that things really start happening for Dany. So in the end, sometimes trying to prevent stuff, you cause it to happen. So I agree with Ned. At least he's consistent to who he is as a person. He's not a hypocrite. He's who he is, and he believes in what he believes in.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Listen. Let's be honest here. I'm pretty sure that King Hammertime realized that he is not the warrior that he was 15 years ago. He wasn't even the warrior that he was 9 years ago. I mean, look, we don't hear about his great deeds during the siege of the Iron Islands. We hear about Stannis. We hear about Jorah Mormont. Yes, he made Balon Greyjoy bend the knee, but we don't hear about how he was, beating people down with that warhammer And remember, that was just 9 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that Robert knows that. He's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, there was a time where I probably would have jumped on the ship and went across the narrow sea my damn self. And he's like, and that time has passed. So if Varys can get this done quickly and quietly, hey, fuck it, I'll let the spider do his thing instead of me going out there and risking my life when
Wait a
really,
minute. I thought he was on the front lines for that's how he was able to see how Jorah did well and united Jorah.
No, he was on the front lines, but what I'm saying is, like, remember, we hear about how well of a fighter he was during Robert's Rebellion. And during the Greyjoy Rebellion, we don't hear about, like, him, basically smashing people to pieces. Yeah, he might have, got a couple people off, knocked a few dudes off their horses, but you got to remember, at this time, he's the king. He's going to have the king's guard around him. He's going to have, a couple of knights around him. He's going to be more well protected than he would have been during the time when he was rebelling against the Mad King. So, he was probably a little bit more lax. This is just more, it was more of a show of strength than it was him having to fight for his life. When it was him rebelling against the Iron Throne, it was, no, okay, this is a fight for my life. Eris called for my head. Whereas this is just like, all right, this dude is over here talking shit. All right, we're just going to send some people over and go and beat down his door. And, okay, hey, listen, unless you want me to actually use this damn hammer now and smash your head in, bend the knee and we'll stop. And it was like, all right, done. But now, can he even lift that warhammer? Before, Ned was talking about he could lift that warhammer with one hand. Now Robert may not be able to lift it with both hands at all, and sitting there like, I know I'm a shadow of my former self. I'm not gonna play myself and go out here and look stupid and get killed. So yeah, Varys, you said you got an assassin that can handle this? Okay, cool. We're gonna do that. Just because it's the easier thing to do. It's the easy way out. And Robert, right now, that's the reason why he went and got Ned. Ned was the easy way out for him. Varys is the easy way out. Littlefinger is the master of coin still, because Littlefinger is the easy way out. Robert at this point is just like, how do I allow myself to still be king for as long as possible? Okay, if this means I don't have to do this kind of work, fine. If this means I don't have to do that kind of work, fine. And he's just appointing other people to do stuff for him so that he doesn't have to do any work.
Yeah, we all know there's no easy way out and there's no shortcut home. Hashtag Rocky4. Tink, did you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, just that I completely agree with every single thing that Don Willie said.
LT, do you have anything you want to add before we move on to
next topic? No, Don Willie said enough. I agree too with Don Willie.
All right, you agree with Don Willie. Okay, so then we move on, and Ned's like, all right, I gotta bust. Okay, we find out that Ned deducts that he actually deducts something. He deducts that it's actually Jaime Lannister that's going to be named Warden of the East, and Ned flips his shit. Basically, he doesn't think, he thinks the Lannisters are getting too much control. He's scared of that. He's still holds it against Jaime. We all know he made a huge fuss about Jaime sitting on the throne. He holds it against Jaime for breaking his vow again and killing, the evil Mad King. He holds it against the Lannisters for even taking the city. He says it was treachery that they used. He doesn't say tactics. He says treachery. And then he even goes as far to say because of it, there was no honor in Robert's rebellion. And he seemed to expect Robert to have gotten more mad when he finally told him the truth of how how the Lannisters took the city, how Jaime was on the throne, and Robert just doesn't even care. So what do you think about Ned's whole perspective on this whole situation of how the Lannisters did their business, how Jaime was on the throne? Was he overreacting, making a big deal? Was he making too much of a big deal about them getting like pretty much titles, but not really? They're kind of like they're titles, but they're not really. They're really meaningless titles. What do you think, James? You think Ned is building up a bit too much in his head, or do you think people need to start listening to Ned about what he's saying?
Well, I think that I do agree with the fact that he should be a little upset that Jaime is going to be named Warden of the West, and there is going to be too much consolidated power with the Lannisters. That part, I agree with his contention. Now, this is part I know. I know there's definitely going to be some disagreement on this. I have some contention with Ned here when it comes in regards to with his honor when it comes to the Jaime Lannister situation, and it's a whole point of contention with a lot. I mean, this is a point with a lot of people, and I have issue with throughout the whole series, and this is part of George's thing here. With acts that should be deemed honorable. Yes, he broke a silly vow, whatever. He broke a vow. With our sensibilities today, we know that what he did was honorable because he killed a madman. I don't care what anybody says. He should be lauded as a hero for killing that mad king. It doesn't matter just because he was a Kingsguard that this is such a heinous act. This guy was burning people alive. He was willing to burn down the whole city just so he wouldn't lose in that fashion. He was willing to kill everybody. So I think personally, this is what makes Jaime a compelling character. And the fact that he's so detested in this book. You come out of this book, you detest him. And for the most part of Clash of Kings, and eventually you get a different side of him. But yeah, this is I think that Ned changed history. He killed the Mad King. Show the man some respect. He saved the kingdom. And then the whole the Lannister thing, I don't even care about that. The whole treachery, with what they did. It's whatever. It could be viewed both ways. They came in and saved the city as well, and saved the kingdom in regards. But yeah, it definitely was done in a less than honorable way. That for sure, you can argue that. But I just think that this whole contention with Jaime, just get over it. View the man for what he is. He slayed an evil man. I don't think he should be as loathed as he is just because he broke a vow. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure that'll come with some disagreement.
Yes, it does come with some disagreement. I disagree. For one, I think one of the problems is that Jaime has never told his side of the story. How can he be expected to be respected if he doesn't actually tell what the hell happened? He never told anyone why he killed the Mad King. What is Ned Stark gonna believe if he sees a dead king and him sitting like an arrogant ass in a chair? The way that he says it, the way that he expresses himself, Ned doesn't have anything. He doesn't know what's in Jaime Lannister's head. He's not a mind reader. He's not a seer or something. He can only know what he sees. And Jaime does not explain himself. He doesn't say anything. He only has the facts that he has. And with those facts...
Well, he does say he's keeping the seat warm for Robert.
Yeah, so, come on. But he said, come on, I'm keeping the seat warm for... Come on, he looks like an arrogant jackass that sat himself there because he liked sitting there after he killed the king. Also, he did save the city, but he killed the pyromancer, and then he could have knocked Aerys out. Aerys was a weak man who would have been very easy to contain. He didn't actually have to kill him. Yes, it's easier, but there is that way. There was treachery in the way that they came inside of King's Landing, and what he did was massacre. He didn't only kill the soldiers, he killed the common people. He could have just killed the soldiers and taken the city. He didn't have to do it the way that he did it. And the thing about the East, the Seven Kingdoms didn't start out as all one Seven Kingdoms. It started out by separate kingdoms, and then the Targaryens came, and then they held power. And now that he is the top, he is the king. He doesn't have dragons. He doesn't have any of the things that the other ones had to control power, to stay him in power. There has to be like a balance. And he might as well give the Lannisters his throne. He might as well sit down and say, Tywin, here you've got. Sit on the damn Iron Throne. Because it's not an empty title. Titles mean things. People believe in titles. People respect people with titles. Follow, listen to people with titles. Remember that moment in the show where Varys is talking to Tyrion, and they're like, who wins? Where is power? Where people believe that power is. And if they start seeing the Lannisters are practically ruling the entire Seven Kingdoms, they're not going to back Robert. They're going to back the Lannisters because they practically have everything. So Ned Stark has very real reasons to be worried that the fact that they're giving everything, because this is just the East. But what happens to the Wardens of the North? That's not in danger. Well, what about a Warden of the South? If something happens in the South, what? Is he going to take the title away and give it also to another Lannister? It's just, I understand Ned's perspective with the worry about the fact that the Lannisters, he already owes the Lannisters so much money. The Lannisters already married into the family. What else is he going to give them? Like, what is he going to put a bow in the throne and give it to them? Because that's the only thing that he needs. And give them the hand of the king. It's the only thing that he is missing, to give them the hand of the king and the throne. And eventually, they're going to get both, as we've seen, because he's practically paved the way for them to take over.
Well, I have some rebuttals. Ned shouldn't need anything from Jaime about this situation, about him killing. He doesn't need to hear anything from Jaime to know that Aerys was a piece of shit. He knows what Aerys did. He killed his father. He killed his brother. He knows what he's capable of. He knows that he was burning people alive and doing heinous acts. He shouldn't need any part of Jaime's thought process in the whole deal. And I think Jaime had to kill him because he's the king. His word, you can't just knock him out and then just put him somewhere. I mean, he's the king. He can say orders. He could if Jaime knocks him out, well, when the king wakes up, he can say, hey, kill Jaime because he knocked me out. I'm the king. You have to obey my orders. I think he had to die.
His father was taking over. Eventually, in no time, the city would be theirs. And yes, even if he had to kill Aerys, in that world of so much uncertainty, of so much danger, and so much betrayal, if your oath doesn't mean anything, if anyone can betray you at any time for anything, like we've seen, then what kind of chaos, what kind of disaster? He believes that, that oaths mean something. And unless there's a really good reason, like he stood all the time. He stood there and watched as his brother and his father died. Why not intervene then? Why not stopping a long time ago before this war went to shit? He had many times to be able to kill Aerys and he didn't. He waited until the end. He waited until his father was invading, until his father was about to take the city and then sat his ass on that throne. I can understand why Ned Stark had doubts about his reasoning to kill Aerys when he had plenty of moments to be able to kill him for very bad reasons. He'd been crazy for a long time. Things had gone to shit for a very long time. But he waited until that moment, the moment in which his father had entered by treachery. And Ned Stark didn't know that the reason that he killed him was because he was about to burn the entire city to the ground.
Entered by treachery? Oh, come on.
He opened the city. He said that he was entering with good faith to back them, and then they betrayed them.
Well, see, Jaime has to pick a time to do it. He can't just do it. He just couldn't do it any time. He would have got, he needed assurances that he was going to live, or else he just would have been killed on the spot. Also, I mean, yes, there's a reason for oaths. There's a reason for oaths, but you need to have flexibility and use common sense when it comes to the rigidity of those things. And that's where I think Ned's downfall is in this particular instant. You need to use some common sense and be able to view things in a different light, other than just coming to this brick wall known as honor or, an oath and not being able to bypass it just because it's an oath. I just think you need to have some rigidity in the thought process. And that's where I come from this whole thing.
See, what Tinker calls treachery, I call tactics. And let's talk about this oath. Oh, Jaime was in a bind, and no matter what he does, he's breaking an oath because he took also an oath to protect the realm and to protect the city and to protect everything. So if he does nothing, and Aerys burns all these innocent people, he's breaking his oath. Well, I mean, which oath? You can't. He even makes the point. These oaths are conflicting. You can't. That's why you have to use your own judgment, use your own morals sometimes, and you got to say fuck the oath because.
I'm not saying that what Jaime did was wrong. I agree with what Jaime said. I'm just saying that the way that it looks, that the appearance of it all, that it looked like a power grab, and without Jaime saying that he was gonna burn all of King's Landing to the ground, the way that it appears is that he killed it so that his family could take power. It's what the way that it looks. They entered by tricking them, and in the moment that his father came in, he killed him, and he sat on that throne. I'm not saying I agree with Jaime. I'm completely understanding of what he did. I would have done the exact same thing in his position. But Jaime has a way of always defending himself with sarcasm, with arrogance, with I don't care a fuck. And it's an attitude that does not help him throughout the books. Later on he changes, but it's not something that makes people look at him in a favorable eye. He thinks that he's going to be judged, and he defends himself with that attitude. And it does not help him, and it makes him look guilty. And it makes him look like a bad person.
To be fair, when Ned came in, he wasn't like, hey, man, what happened? He was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, just getting on his case. He's like, what the fuck?
Also, we got to remember, in the end, they gave the throne to Robert. They didn't make a power grab. I think he should have, Ned should have took back, said, oh, the Lannisters gave the throne. They took the city, and they gave the throne to Robert. I think that he should have used common sense there and been like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't a power grab.
Yes, but they gave him the city by killing 2 innocent children and a woman. Like, everything that happens, like, first they take the city, they slaughter 3 people, they kill the king, then they kill 2 children, then they kill an innocent woman. Like, the way we also have to know that Ned is coming from a horrible moment. His family is gone. He's gone through a terrible war, and Ned is not someone that enjoys war or enjoys violence. He was not Robert Baratheon. He's been surrounded by death. He's been surrounded by war. He arrives to a city that God knows how it was, and wars in that time, that had to be brutal. He arrives, and the king is dead. He's getting sarcasm from everyone, and then they show 2 dead children, which is something that he hates, like the killing of children. An innocent woman is dead. Then he goes, and his sister is, like, we also have to see the fact that I don't think Ned is handled all of that well. And I think that is just that I don't say that he's even right about Jaime and the way he thinks. But I have compassion for a man that it was not meant for war, that was not meant for all the tragedies that happened to him, and that just saw one family do one thing after another that he considers awful.
But
so I'm not surprised by his point of view.
My point is that, I mean, yes, the events were reprehensible. I'm not saying that those events were justified by any means. I'm saying my point of contention with Ned is the fact that his point of contention with Jaime is all on the basis that he broke the oath. That's the only reason why that's the main reason why he doesn't like Jaime, just because he broke his King's Vow oath. That's the main reason why he doesn't like Jaime. And I just think that he should be able to overlook it.
Jaime insinuated that even if he, because I think Tinker was saying earlier that, Jaime didn't tell nobody, but Jaime insinuated that Ned judged him when he's sitting on the throne. Ned probably wouldn't have cared to hear what he had to say anyway.
No, that's exactly what happened. As soon as he walked on the throne, Ned came in there and was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's like over, you're just nagging the fuck out of him, and Jaime was like, whoa, I'm just keeping it warm for Robert. Oh, fuck this guy. And he just walked away. LT, you got something to say?
No, yeah, and then it would have been bad because, Jaime's telling Ned, all you had to do is climb those steps, but that would have been bad for Jaime because he would have been sent to the wall.
Yeah. So, LT, do you have anything to say about this whole point of view on the Lannisters?
No, and I don't mean to, I'm a man of mostly little words, and I feel like Tinker and Don Woolley they have so much thoughts. Just like, how could I follow up to their great wisdom? I mean, they both put everything out there.
Who do you agree with, for one? Let's hear
Well, I
that.
kind of fell asleep a little bit and nodded off because, so I don't know. Sorry.
James, you put him to sleep. And Tink. Don, do you have anything to say about this point of view where this contention that Ned has against the Lannisters and Jaime and the treachery of how they took the city?
Well, yeah, listen, let's be honest. It was treachery because, remember,
Or tactics?
Nope. Because Pycelle was the one that went to the Mad King and said, hey, look, it's your friend Tywin Lannister. Tywin is here to save you. Go and open the door for him. And even Tywin came through, and he didn't sound any kind of alarms or anything. He wasn't trying to beat down the door. He walked right through, and when everybody thought everything was okay, Tywin gave the order to start slaughtering people. So
he was the third man.
You can call the tactics all you want to, but that was absolutely treacherous, and I do not fault Tywin because Tywin was looking out for House Lannister. So, with that being said, let's get back to Ned's perspective. Ned was the guy who was all about, hey, you know what? If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this the right way, because what the Mad King did to his father and brother was absolutely treacherous. I mean, come on, you let a man get a trial by combat, and then you tell that man that his opponent is going to be fire, and then you say, hey, I'm gonna put the sword.
With a bunch of people in the room, remember? There's probably
I mean, but what I'm saying is the whole way that the Mad King went about killing Brandon and Rickard was absolutely treacherous as well. So, like, nobody here is really innocent. There's a lot of treachery to go around, and that is probably the only one that's like, hey, can we actually get back to all the shit that we've been reading in these books for the past couple of thousand years about how you're supposed to, act in terms of a battle, and hey, you, Mr. Gold, golden armor, white cloak Lannister, you took an oath to protect your king, and you stabbed him in the back. And yes, I think Ned was a little bit too rigid with that, but at the same point, I think he was thinking about the other Kingsguard who either lost their lives or risked their lives, fighting against them, like Barristan. I mean, he has a great deal of respect for Barristan Selmy, even though Barristan was his opponent at one time. And unfortunately, Ned sometimes looks at things a little bit too one-sided and too idealistic, and is not thinking about, well, hey, you know what? Sometimes the water does get murky, and he forgets that, that even he has engaged in duplicitous behavior. Let's go back to the whole Jon thing. Just to take a look at that whole situation with him, Jon, Catelyn, and not telling his boy Robert. That's all, duplicitous treachery on his end now, but he'll consider it to be honorable because he's honoring his sister's last request to keep her son safe. So, I mean, nobody here is clean, but unfortunately, Ned is not allowing anyone else to wash the dirt off of them. He's like, oh no, the Lannisters are dirty, period, point blank. Jaime did this thing dirty, Tywin did this thing dirty, and fuck it, they're just dirty for life. I don't care what anybody says. And it's like, well, look, with the whole warden of the East position, yeah, Robert is messed up for saying, oh well, yeah, I'm not gonna give it to my mentor's kid. It's his birthright, but I'm not gonna give it to him. I'm gonna, give it to the Lannisters, and it's like, dude, do you not see that you got two very large regions, both of which actually border the north? Both of these places border the north, and it's like, yeah, you just sandwiched me in between two armies of people that I hate. So if they wanted to, if for some reason there was some hostilities, I could get attacked on two fronts because you just handed the East and the West to the Lannisters. And yeah, so I mean, like, I can understand Ned's resentment on that end, where it's like, well, one, you're breaking tradition, and two, you're kind of backstabbing Jon Arryn by not holding his son's position the way that it should be. But at the same point, there's the other side of it, that Ned is too narrow-minded, and we see later how that narrow-mindedness comes back to haunt him and the rest of his family.
So when you,
but at the same time, he was not completely wrong. Jaime Lannister throws his son out of a tower while he's still in Winterfell. Bran could have died. So,
I understand that. I'm
that
not.
sense, he was not that far-fetched. His son
not
died because of Jaime Lannister.
I'm not saying that he wasn't wrong. What I'm saying is that because of his short-sightedness and him just saying, okay, this is the way it should be, and not taking things for how they actually are, that is, one of the biggest problems with him. And I'm pretty sure when we get to whenever Cersei and Ned have their talk, whatever part of
that's a
of this
disaster.
is, I'm just saying, but we'll get more into the whole thing of what it is versus what he wants it to be. But this is just the first part of showing how Ned can kind of get so caught up in, oh no, but it says here, in code 147 subsection B, subsection 2.6.5.8, in like, he's one of those kind of guys that you would hate for him to be a police officer, because while somebody might be like, all right, yeah, you were speeding, but since you don't have any warrants out or anything, I'll give you a warning. He's the guy to be like, well, according to traffic code 16.9.2 subsection B, and then triple subsection 15.18.6.2.7, it says here, and it's just like, oh, come on, man.
Well, you made me think about this, Don, when you brought up Ned's reverence for Barristan, and it's the beauty of George's writing, because he makes you think of these ethical quandaries, and the question that I come up with is, what is truly more honorable? Is it more honorable to defend a murderous lunatic just based off an oath, or is it more honorable to kill said lunatic and going against your oath? What is truly the more honorable act? So those are the kind of questions that I come up with and I think about, and I go with the latter, me personally.
But that lunatic is not the only person that Barristan was defending. He was also defending his prince. To kill Aerys would have been to kill the entire family, as we've seen. Barristan was probably also very loyal to Prince Rhaegar, as we see later on with Dany. He was also very loyal to Elia and the children. We've seen with the Lannisters that to kill one, you have to kill them all. And if you care about the other people that are not crazy and that could be rulers, do you condemn them all for that crazy person?
Well, here's the question: if George,
as you said, he does create complicated situations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If Aerys tells Barristan Selmy, an honorable man, we believe, to murder a child, what does Barristan Selmy do? Who's so rigid with his oaths? Does he kill the child? And these are the kind of things that we got to think about when it comes to these oaths.
Do we actually think that he would do it? I don't think he would.
I think he would, actually.
Yeah, because he was so. Some of these guys were so hell bent with their oaths, and these are some of the things that we just got to think about when we're reading these books.
Yeah,
I think he would, and I agree. And the reason why is I can't remember if it was Arthur Dane. It probably was it was either Arthur Dane or Joe Hightower who told Jaime. He said, we don't question the king. We just, it's not our place. Yeah, Hightower. Yeah. So I think he would have done it. It's sad to say, but I think he would.
Yeah. So basically, in the end, Jaime was a hero for killing Darius, and he was even more of a hero for throwing Bran out the window. So
don't even start, Jerry. Don't even start.
I didn't say that.
Wait, I agree. Surprisingly, I agree with Jerry when he does. Just think about it from an optimistic point of view. Look, if Jaime doesn't throw Bran out the window, Bran probably never becomes what he is now. It's all development. It's development in his story. So Jaime helped progress that development. So in a way, he is a hero.
It's a good act.
I didn't say it was a good act. I didn't say it was a good act. I just said the progression and how it happened. It's stuff. It's like we wouldn't get to point B without point A, and it was not the act wasn't hero, but it's progression. And yeah, Jaime, if you think about Jaime as a hero,
basically, Bran went from point B to point A in the best manner possible. So, anyways, we'll move on to.
Yeah, I'm sure that if Bran had to choose between being a boy that could walk and could talk and could eventually become that to being a cripple stuck in a tree, I don't think he would choose being a cripple stuck in a tree. Yeah, let's move on.
But since he's in the tree, he's going to be a hero. But if he's just a regular boy walking around, he's probably just a regular kid.
So
he wouldn't become what he has become, that he would need to be a cripple for that. And that won't be proven because we don't have that choice.
Yeah. So anyways, the chapter ends basically with Ned, as we discussed, he thinks he doesn't belong, wants to be back in Winterfell. So we'll move on to Eddard III, or the last of the Eddard that we're covering, last of Eddard's thoughts that we're covering. And this one, controversy is coming up. Basically, it starts with Ned finding out that they found Arya after the whole incident with her and Joffrey and the Micah the Butcher's boy. And first thing he did is he brings Sansa. He calls for Sansa to be woken up and brought to them. This is a weird thing I noticed when I read. He doesn't want to run because for some reason running is not dignified, and he knows that eyes are on him and the hand shouldn't run. So he's kind of aware. Here it kind of shows that he's aware that people are watching him because he's a hand, which is something kind of interesting. So he's at least aware of that. He also shows awareness in politics to show that, Derry doesn't like him because of the history, fighting for this. He's able to deduce that pretty well. Believes that him and Robert could have settled the issue, which he was probably right. And when he gets to the audience, like when he gets in there, he immediately starts looking for who's in the room. He surveys the room, looks for friendly faces. It kind of shows that he's aware of his audience. He knows his audience, and he's got mindfulness to know what to do. And all the whole time he's putting on like a facet, like, well, what's the meaning of this? Why was my daughter not brought to me? And he also notices that when Joffrey's lying, that he couldn't look at Arya, so he's able to deduce that Joffrey was lying because he should have. He couldn't look at Arya. Then he asked Sansa to tell her story. And what do y'all think of Ned's whole, kind of surveying all this whole thing going on, and then his decision to bring Sansa in as a witness, as even though Sansa had told Ned what to do, or told Ned what she saw, and he heard it before, she ends up balking and becoming like, I don't remember. What do y'all think of Ned's decision on one, bringing Sansa involved, and two, of how he was surveying everything and how he was?
What I don't get about this is like, all right, Ned mentions later that well, Sansa had to lie, to stay in good peace with Joffrey. But
so why did he bring her in there to begin with?
No, I know, I don't get it. And then also, he wants his kids to be honorable. So I don't know. I'm confused right now. Sorry.
I think that Ned didn't expect Sansa to lie, but the moment that she lied, I don't think he wanted there to be bad blood between the sisters. I think that he wanted peace between the sisters, and I honestly don't think that Ned expected that she would lie, because it was family, and he's always about protecting family, about taking care of family and having each other's back. And he didn't expect that Sansa would lie, which is why he brought her there. But later on, when he thinks about it, because you also have to remember that he says that it's been 4 days. 4 days of his daughter missing. 4 days in which he didn't know if he was going to find her alive. 4 days in if he didn't know that the Lannisters would find her first and kill her. He loves his children a lot. We've seen that. He must have been in an absolute panic. And in that moment, he was only thinking to get to Arya, bring Sansa, please, let's just resolve this, and let's just please make her be safe, and let's just fix this, and just, he was probably like feeling dreadfully and fear for his daughter, and he was like looking around, and he's observing, because he's like, I have to make certain that, because he knows that what the Lannisters want. He says it there, like, please tell me it was not the Lannisters. And like, are you bringing her here? No, the Lannisters were there waiting. He's like, damn it. He knows what the Lannisters will do. And in that moment, he just wants to resolve it and get the story out. And when Sansa suddenly betrays them and does not tell the truth, in that moment, he thinks, of course, she's gonna try to back his beloved. That was the moment which I was like, stupid Sansa, I hate her. And then I just think he wants to create peace. They're in King's Landing. He realizes that they're against him. They cannot, as a family, fall apart and fall to pieces, because then it'll definitely be the end of them. That's what he's thinking. And he tries to say, well, they're betrothed. If she betrays her betrothed now, what's going to happen to them later on in their marriage? And I think it's, he's not lying, because that part is true. But it's, that's one of the things that he tries to do to kind of try to bring peace between the sisters. That's my thoughts on it.
What do you think, James? Do you think he made a mistake in bringing Sansa in? And how do you think he was, serving? Like, how do you think he was assessing the situation, the way he was walking in there, and the way he was surveying the crowd and stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was essentially going to say something similar to what Tink said. Obviously, in hindsight, it was a mistake. But I do believe that he thought Sansa was going to tell the truth, and then he came to the realization later that it was, that she did what she had to do. But yeah, once again, I think this was more important for Sansa's storyline than Ned's, this particular chapter, really, because I think it like sowed it showed that how she eventually has to overcome her naivete towards Joffrey. She had this inflated sense of him, and then of course she has to get over it. That's part of her character growth. So I think this chapter was more for her in that regards instead of Ned. But it does show that Ned has a certain level of perception. He was able to survey what was going on and how he had to act. So that's interesting to see from Ned, because I kind of wouldn't suspect that from him. But it happened, and yeah, Joffrey's a piece of shit and Cersei sucks. So yeah.
Don Willie, anything here, or think about covered?
Yeah, I mean, this was unfortunately a really bad situation that Ned found himself and his family in, and then this is the first time where he really gets to see the dynamic that that for one, Sansa's ambition to be queen kind of can outweigh her loyalty to the family. And then also, too, he got to see that Joffrey is not his father's son in terms of, in terms of being not only a warrior, but kind of being able to stand on his own 2 feet. Because even during that whole exchange, Cersei is the one that kind of keeps jumping in and is like, oh, and yeah, basically you tell him. And then when when Ned is trying to get Robert to jump in, it's really a back and forth between Cersei and Ned, and that is kind of looking at Robert like, come on, dude, like seriously, bro, like, dude, you're the king, dude. And Robert is just kind of sitting there like, set the crown, but wife
he was
is
kind
speaking,
of
so.
he was kind of a cuck right there.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, yeah, I got the crown, but his wife, she's speaking, and say, man, dude, say. Yeah, pretty much. So,
He did tell her, quiet, woman.
Yeah, that lasted for about 10 seconds. So, at the end of the day, it wasn't really the Robert Baratheon show.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this shows that Ned is able to be perceptive, but he's not able to be perceptive ahead of time. He's not able to be predictive, if that makes sense. Like, he perceives things, but it's always a few steps too late. So that's why I think he thought Sansa would be okay, but once, he started surveying the room and it was already too late, and I think that's kind of like, we see that more in the Ned character later. But then and then also I think this is a point where he kind of decides that Joffrey is not the best for her daughter. He's going to go along with it for now. He hasn't quite decided to break the engagement, but it makes it easier for it later. So. Okay, and then we find out, they make the decision, children fight, let it be over, but then Cersei's like, well, I need a wolf skin. We need a wolf, and then, fuck that bitch, and we all know what happens there. Ned tries some interesting ways to get through Robert on that. First, he decides to protest to Robert for the love of me and for the love of my sister. I mean, do y'all think that was that a good idea for him to say that? Bring up Lyanna with Cersei right there? I don't know. And then, after that doesn't work, he tries to tell her, do it himself. And, should he have pushed that issue more? Because Robert just kind of walked out on him at that point. Didn't say anything, just left the room. And then, obviously he decides to kill a lady himself. What do you think he should, before we get to doing the lady thing, how do you think he should have protested to Robert? Do you think it was smart of him to use Lyanna's name, and then when that didn't work, to use kind of the guilt thing, do it yourself? What do y'all think?
I mean, look, at the end of it, he was hoping he could appeal to the man that Robert was. And like I said before, this is the moment where he realized how different the dynamics actually were. Where it's like, all right, well, damn it, man, Ned, I think at this point he realizes that Robert knows that he's not the man he used to be either. Robert, like Cersei is basically chastising Robert in front of all of these people, and we hear later about how Robert is kind of abusive to Joffrey, and it may be because of the fact that he felt like, okay, well, I can't, run around taking out my frustrations on, from dealing with Cersei on Cersei too much, because he's got Jaime as his king's guard. Jaime had already killed one king, and then also Tywin Lannister is his father-in-law. So he winds up taking that out on Joffrey. And, so Ned is sitting there in a situation now where he's like, God damn it, I played the last card I had, and in order for me to not, in order for me to spare my daughter the most amount of grief that I can, I basically have to kill this wolf my damn self. And
well, what would have you done differently, Don Willie, as far as with Robert goes?
I don't know that there's anything that could have been done differently. I mean, look, he pulled out the guilt card. He told him, like, hey, this isn't the actual wolf. I mean, and it was just like, as soon as Cersei said, no, this is what I want done, it was pretty much like that's the end of it. Now, like, other than saying, well, fuck it, I'm not going to be Hand of the King anymore. I mean, that might have been the ultimate trump card, but at the same point, they're on the King's Road now, and Ned is surrounded by Lannisters, like literally surrounded by Lannisters. At that point, Cersei probably could have been like, "Oh, okay, well, since you quit being Hand of the King, arrest him and his daughters for treason." So I mean, Ned was in a real precarious situation, and I think unfortunately, he played the options that he had that were going to get him and his daughters out of there alive.
What about you, Tink? Do you think there's anything differently he could have done?
No, I think I agree with Don Willow. I think that, Robert is not the man that he used to be. First, he starts with saying, this is not the wolf that actually did it. Then he says, you're my best friend. You wanted me to come down south with you. For the love you have for me, don't do it. That doesn't work. Then he brings in the big guns, Lyanna, the love of his life. Even that doesn't convince him. And then he said, okay, if you cannot be convinced, why don't you, man up, be the king, and actually kill the wolf? And at that point, he walks out. There's there's no reasoning with him. He's a coward. He doesn't want to go against Cersei. He, as Don Willie pointed out before, he wants the easy way out, the coward's way out, and that is easy, just giving in. And I like the fact that Ned said, okay, then I'll kill her myself. Okay, if she has to die, I'm gonna do it myself. No freaking Lannister is gonna kill one of my daughter's wolf and Northern Wolf, and that wolf is gonna be buried in Winterfell. The queen ain't getting this fur, this wolf's fur. She's gonna be buried. She's gonna be killed in a humane manner by someone that cares for her. And I that's another show, the fact that he's not, he might be the king, but he ain't the one who's really ruling. And it also shows the fact that he may be Hand of the King, but just because he's the Hand doesn't mean that he has as much power as a Hand actually should. Because if a Hand doesn't have the people that can actually put those orders into effect, he's the Hand of the King. But Cersei has the people. She's got the loyalty, the people that she pays. She's got the Lannister backing her. He was always outnumbered. Being Hand of the King, if you don't have the power to back it up, doesn't actually mean that much. If the king is not listening to you, if you don't have the numbers and you don't have the money and you don't have the anything, doesn't matter what you are, you're not going to be able to put it forth. And I think that is the first time that we see that even if he's the Hand of the King, he doesn't really have the power the Hand of the King should have, because he doesn't have the backing that he needs to put those orders and that power in force.
All right, James or LT, any of y'all think anything Ned could have done differently? Or you pretty much agree with Tink and Don Willie here?
I mean, I essentially agree. I mean, he pulled out all the stops. I don't think he could have done anything different. I don't think he did anything wrong. Once again, I think this just shows that Robert Baratheon is a baby back bitch. And if I was Robert Baratheon in that moment, I would have looked at Cersei like, you just need to shut up. And I would have looked at Joffrey and said, your little pussy ass needs to stop getting disarmed by girls and grow the fuck up. And yeah, no direwolf is dying. But that's just me. That's just me. Oh, and yeah, it's definitely a tragedy. What happened to Lady, and it makes sense that Ned is the one that it was set up in the beginning where he killed Will, that he was going to have to do this in his own mind, and it sucked that it had to happen.
LT, any thoughts?
Is that your command, Robert? Is that your command? No, yeah, there's nothing he could have done differently. He had his back up against the wall. He's just trying to make the best possible outcome. But I thought that was just the great man Ned is, I'm going to take out Lady. I'm going to give her an honorable death. you know, and it's just a touching moment. The first time I read it, I got teary-eyed. I almost cried the first time I ever read it. It was like, and even in the show, the same thing. I think he did all he could do.
I actually think there's one thing he could have done differently.
Bring it on us, Jerry.
Because he said he was going to kill her and send her body up north. Why not pull a little treachery or tactics and make a muzzle for her? Say you killed her, put her in a bag, and send her up north, and then just let her live up north. There's no.
But Jay, if he did that, wouldn't you call him a criminal?
No.
But what if someone found out and it got back to Robert?
Hey, that is a risk. That's a risk.
Well,
but I would say after the sign he got, do you really think he should have taken those wolves' lives a little bit more seriously?
You could definitely say that would have been, maybe the right thing to do, or just let her out in the wild. But as we know, Ned's rigid nature, he got an order from the king to kill, that the direwolf must die. It's just not against. I just don't think it's in him to go against his king's order.
I mean, I agree on that, James. I'm just saying that's what I think he should have done, but it is against. I agree with you 100% that it's against his nature.
And gamble with his daughter's life. Arya's life.
Then we're gonna get if he would have sent the wolf up north in that manner, and Robert found out, Robert wasn't gonna go and be like, okay, you're doing that, Arya's gonna die now. That wasn't gonna happen.
But Cersei could have tried to do something serious. We're talking about the
she
fact
that she would have made a fuss, and he would have honored her.
Cersei was out for blood, and Robert would have thought that a betrayal, something that he never expects from Ned. And I think that Ned is gotten to the point in which he does not recognize Robert, and he's like, what the hell will he do? And I just think that that Arya was already at risk for 4 days. He didn't know whether Arya was alive or dead. At this point, while he's very sad about the direwolves, he just wants his daughters to be safe and well. And if that means killing a lady and trying to do it in a peaceful way, he's surrounded by Lannisters. He's going to be surrounded by King's Landing. He's just got a good look. The fact that Robert won't have his back just because he's his friend, just because he's his hand. And there's no way that he's going to gamble with
honestly,
that.
Robert probably wouldn't care if it happened. He'd be like, whatever. He's getting rid of the wolf. What do you want from him? He's getting rid of the wolf. I think Robert would be like, I don't think he'd be like, what? I told you this. Robert just wants the wolf out of the picture.
We've seen that Robert doesn't like it when people think that he's powerless, when people think they don't listen. He always has that. Remember how he's talking about how people call him the usurper, how that all those issues, Robert has them. He's less of a man than he used to be. People used to follow all of his commands because they respected him. They think he was another man, and he knows that he's not the man that he used to be. No, and Cersei is a wild card. She's crazy fucking nuts, and she hates the Starks. It doesn't matter if.
But she's not. What's she gonna do? What is she gonna do? What can she do?
I don't know, but that's not something he's gonna risk. No matter how much he cares about a wolf, there's no way that he's gonna put his 2 daughters in any way in which it can weaken him. He doesn't know what he's gonna find in King's Landing. He doesn't know which situations he's gonna be. Try to be tricky. Try to go against a command. Try to do some treachery by trying to save the wolf when it can come back to bite him in the ass when he's in a city surrounded by people that are gonna be against him. That's nuts, and that's risky, and that is completely reckless. And
Robert never said kill the wolf. He just said whatever, be it as it may. If he would have just said, "Well, I'm gonna get rid of the wolf. It's gonna be gone. I'll take care of it myself," and he could talk his way out of it. It's not that it wouldn't have been that hard. It would have been against his character, yeah, but it wouldn't have been that hard to talk your way out of it. Cersei would have been pissed, yes, but she can't do shit.
why risk it? Why risk it when he's already gonna be in a ton lot of danger? Why add more danger to it?
Because those wolves mean something. He knew it. That's why Jon was able to
know that.
him.
He doesn't know that, and his children are gonna always mean a hell of a lot more than some wolf. And I love wolves.
I think he knew. I think he knows that there was something about those wolves.
You just love thinking.
Tinker, who do you hate more, Robert or Cersei?
Let's not get into that right now, LT. But anyone else have any idea of does anyone else besides me and Tinker have any thoughts on the? Well, I think James had it too. Don Willie, any thoughts there, or should I just move on to the last piece right here? Actually, really, there's not really much to say. After that, he saw that Michael was killed by the Hound. He didn't really do anything. He just was kind of sad feeling. Do y'all think he should have done anything about that? Like, confronted the Hound, made a big fuss about it? Or do you think it was right for him to just leave it as it was?
It was right for him to leave it alone because it just would have caused more problems. And he was like, Ned was like, damn, it fucking sucks, but what was he going to do? I mean, you know.
I essentially agree with that sentiment.
I kind of agree with it too.
I mean, listen, he was just a butcher's boy, and, you know, at the end of the day, like, the kid's already dead. What was he going to do?
Well, you know, Ned likes to make a fuss sometimes.
Yeah, but at this point, I think Ned's seeing clearly how things are going, what Robert's thinking is like, and it's just after everything that's happened, it's just Robert would not have even wanted to even see him at this point. He doesn't want trouble. Robert doesn't want trouble, and I think Ned's seen it, and at this point, you know, the kid is dead. He just, you know, wants Lady to be buried up north and try to get some peace for his daughters. Just what is he gonna do? We've seen how Robert and Cersei and the rest are. Right now, at this point, raising more trouble will just be worse for him and his daughters.
Yeah. And that's why he should have delayed his daughters, but, you know, we already discussed that. So, unless anyone has anything more to say about that, that brings us to the end of our first part of our Ned Talks series. Hopefully we'll be able to do this maybe again, part 2 in a month or so. Does anyone have anything they want to say about the Ned before we sign off?
You know what? I will say that going back and analyzing this a little bit more, it's given me kind of a different perspective on this, you know, on Ned, period, and just kind of the struggle he's had to go through in terms of, you know, doing this whole balancing act. You know, he may have had one of the toughest times with navigating his entire world, not just his relationship with with Robert and stuff in King's Landing, but also the stuff with his own household. I mean, yeah, it's man, Ned had it tough, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ned had maybe one of the best, like, most favorable views on him to start off this series. It's easy to see why so many people became, you know, a big fan of this character. And, you know, and it was easy to overlook, at least in your first read, a lot of the mistakes that he started to make as time goes on. So, I mean, I know I didn't catch it when I first read it. I'm sure none of y'all did either. It's really having to go back and reread this stuff and really catch some of maybe the things he could have done better. But yeah, I think overall, like, the first introduction of Ned, he couldn't have been painted in almost a better light, in my opinion.
What I do have to say about Ned is that, yes, he does a lot of mistakes, and yes, he should have never gone to King's Landing. Even he says that. Even he is self-aware. But I think it's also easier to judge from outside. We see all the other POVs, we see what all the others are thinking, or at least a great deal, while he only has a very narrow view, and he has the information that he has little by little. And it's always easier to think what you would do when you're outside of the situation and analyzing and being able to think. You know, when you're there in the moment, with who knows what are you feeling, who knows what situation you're there, the stress, the fears, the memories of the past. It's not so easy to do. You know, how many of us now look back to our own lives and say, God, why didn't I do that differently? And we don't have lives as complicated as that. So I think you also have to have compassion for a man who, as Don Willie said, he was having a very difficult life and a difficult balancing act. And yes, he made a lot of mistakes, but in the end of the day, he tried to be coherent with who he was. He tried to be honorable. He tried to be a good person, and he just, you know, was in the wrong place that he should have never been.
And we'll discuss that much more in the future parts. James?
Yeah, I just would like my final thought on wrapping this up is, yeah, like I said, I think Ned is a great man. I think he's always had great intentions. But I believe his downfall is the rigidity of his thought process. And I will just end it there.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in future parts. So let's go ahead and start with the sign-offs. Tink, you want to go first?
Anyways, thanks for everyone who was there watching us, who was in the chat, commenting while we were doing this chat. I really enjoyed it. I love Ned, so I love going through these chapters, and I cannot wait for more of the Ned talks. Bye-bye, everyone.
LT?
Yeah, it's fun to go back, dig into the core of this story where it started. But yeah, very fun to be here, and go check out. I just recently released back-to-back days, Storytime number 27 and Storytime number 28. I'll check it out. And if you're not subscribed to me, you're watching this video, subscribe.
All right, James.
Yeah, I'm super busy, so I can't really do too many videos on my own channel, but it's always a blast to do things with my fellow Hypes Watch members. And it was great talking about Ned. Next month, yeah, check out. Maybe we'll have another Ned Talks, and hopefully also next month we'll be doing another reread. And actually, it's going to be another Ned chapter, so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about the whole chapter, not just Ned. We did here. All right, Don Willie.
Yeah, listen, it's great to be here with my people as always. Look out for the next Ned Talk. And actually, yeah, the next reread is a chapter of my choosing. It is, I believe, Eddard 12. 13? Either 12 or 13. 12. Okay, it's Eddard 12. All right, so yeah, Eddard 12. And, so look for the notification for that. But also, it's been a while, but I finally put out a new video on my channel. So for all of you guys who actually happen to like Dan and Dave as executive producers of Game of Thrones, I have put forth some compelling arguments why I think they actually have done a good job thus far with the TV show. But don't think that I have given them a pass on anything, because even though I have made the case for Dan and Dave, coming in the next week or two will be the case against Dan and Dave. So
should be a much longer video.
So for you guys out there who have been waiting for me to put out a video, go and check it out. I think you will find that it is one of my best, and I'm only gonna be getting better. All right, so thank you guys for coming out and checking us out. And as always, you already know what I say. Valor the Iris.
All right, everyone. Thanks for all y'all coming in to do this. Hopefully we can do Ned Talks Part 2 next month. Be on the lookout, and Hypes Watch is out. Bye, everyone.